I know.
Oh, that's so short here.
Makes things a lot easier a lot of times than it never happens. Yeah.
I just so used to I was like, right, yeah. Yes. They started putting hospital records in there. All of them
All right, everybody's here, we're gonna get started. This will be the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of Seven Oaks Community Development District being held Wednesday, October 12th, 2021, 6:30 p.m. Being held at the Seven Oaks Clubhouse located at 2910 Sports Court Circle, Wesley Chapter Florida 33544. Present representing our forum, we have our Chairman Jack Christensen here, Vice Chairman Sean Graves here, Assistant Secretaries Tom Graff here, Andrew Mendenhall here, and Laura O'Donnell
here.
Our District Council Vanessa Steinert, District Engineer Tanya Stewart, Clubhouse Manager Teresa Flores, Maintenance Manager John Genzaloa, and District Manager Taylor Nelson. It's time to move to audience comments. We've got a couple cards here. If there's anybody else who wishes to make a comment, I don't have a card from with you now. I'll begin with Mr. Ted Rhodes.
Just look at the agenda, and I noticed that there's no item on it regarding the status of the pool repair. I see it's started but not in operation yet. Based on the last meeting, I was on the expectation was to be operating by the end of September, beginning of October. And now the middle of October, it looks like we're a good week or two away. This it should be on the agenda. Thank you.
We should go get an update on that when we go into our field operations and clubhouse reports. Next, John Thompson.
Well, in the past, I think the previous meeting, we were talking about S12
and we kind of gloss over it every time. There isn't much detail spent talking about the details of S12. So if maybe today a little bit more time can be devoted towards S12, where we stand, what the future is. And also in the previous meeting, there was a bunch of conversation back and forth about the budget associated to S12 and how at one point in the conversation it was talking about using those funds towards something else and then saying, no, that's actually flagged for S12. So if money is, tagged for the S12, so like $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is, we need to make sure that it's always held for just that. Because the last thing I would want is a bond or some type of assessment to have to be built so that in case Crown actually did take our offer and we had to pay it, we actually had the money and we didn't have to do some type of special bond or something that has to come out of our money. And then S19, court reporter, I know it's come up in the past. I know that Patrick's usually here to bring that up. Since he wasn't here, I figured I'd be the one to voice it. Really need to have a court reporter at the next meeting. If we do have the item go to appeal, because maybe we won't be as lucky on the planning commission this time. We need that court reporter in order to meet the time requirements so that we can file an appeal if things don't go the way that we planned. So that's all I had. Thanks a lot.
On that topic, can we look into whether or not the report is necessary? Do you know that?
So I talked with our attorney, and she advised that it would not be necessary, just because it's already being recorded by a court reporter, so we will be able to extract that from public record.
Mr. Dodd?
I'm Steve Dodd. I've never been to a CCD meeting yet. I've been here about 2 months. We live in Springwood, and I guess as a newcomer, I've noticed the traffic goes very fast, and there's a lot of it on Ancient Oaks. And Springbrook, it's almost a line intersection, and it's hard to pull out of. I've been shocked a couple times how quickly the cars come around the curve there. I've mentioned it to John a couple times. And he said tonight we're going to talk about maybe putting in a speed table in that vicinity. And I just like to give you my wholehearted support. I think that's a great idea. I hope you do it. And I'd like to see about half a dozen more of them on Ancient Oaks. Because if you drive 30 down Ancient Oaks, I don't know if anybody's tried to drive 30 down Ancient Oaks, but you're leading a parade. Usually you'll have 3, 4, 5 cars behind you. And to me, and I am an engineer, I'm a civil engineer. So, and I've worked for several cities. And so I know something about it. And 30 seems just plenty fast to drive in Ancient Oaks. And with bike paths right beside it, I've seen little kids trying to ride these bike paths, and it makes me nervous. I wouldn't want my kids to ride on a bike path. So another great idea I have would be to maybe put a separate bike trail along Ancient Oaks so that the bike paths aren't so close to the traffic. But that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dodd. Mr. Desai? I'm going to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, my name is Dilip Desai, and I have given the information to Teresa as an initial start. This is regarding a classes I like to handle here. I am now qualified as a coach, and this is by CARES Health and Wellness Department. And the information is given to Teresa, and idea is to have classes for senior. When they get old, they usually have tendency to fall. When they fall, what happens? They break the bone. And those people who break the bone, out of every 100 people who break the bone, 25% die within the first 1 year. This classes is to help them learn, educate, and try to prevent themselves from falling. So I did the classes, I learned everything, I'm qualified, but this is handled by CARES Corporation. The information is given to Teresa. If you allow them, then I will be a coach with another coach doing these classes for 4 weeks. Is 16 hours, means 2 hours every session, twice a week for 4 weeks. And I find it is going to be very helpful. I myself is a senior, and it is for Seven Oaks senior community maybe a good idea. We like to hold these classes right here. That's why I'm here to present to CDD to approve it. So once you approve, Teresa will contact me and we'll communicate or whatever you have planned forward.
Thank you. So you're basically requesting space.
Yes.
Is this a pro bono thing?
Sorry,
A pro bono thing?
what is pro bono?
Free?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. You have a printout that he provided, Teresa brought, should be on the top stack of the items you have in front of you. So if you want to glance over it during the meeting, I would say if you guys want to discuss it further with the supervisor with us at the end, we can add that on, or put it on the next agenda for discussion if it's running late.
You can have a question for this. Looking for the free space, but would
This is the handbook will be given to the class participants.
would the participants be paying for the classes?
No.
Okay.
And it is this is the booklet they have to follow and learn a lot. So this is given by the CARES.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. That'll conclude our audience comments. Is there any other audience that wish to make comments that I am not given an opportunity to? With that being said, boards are out, I'd like to move the RFP review and landscape evaluations to the front of the agenda since we have a lot of guests with us tonight. So if you'd like to either have your scorecards already ready, and if not, the last page is on your stack of paperwork, so I brought an evaluation template for you to fill out as well. Have you guys already had a chance to review all these? We have hard copies if you need. I would encourage public discussion to start off maybe with John, if you wanted to give any overview of the summary he provided you after reviewing the proposals.
Well, you all have a spreadsheet of the summary. I've graded the companies myself, which ultimately my grade doesn't count in your vote, but I know where I stand with them. It'll be interesting, I guess, to see how you guys come out. I have my opinions of every one of them. I'm not quite sure if you want me to go just over them to start with my opinions, or if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, maybe we should open up for Q&A from the board then, so, again, we'll want the votes obviously be from 5 board members. John's, evaluation is supplementary for you. Does anybody want to put an opinion forward as far as top choices, evaluation, thoughts, questions?
So first, I would like to actually hear John's assessment if you're comfortable giving that.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over.
Is that the path we want to take?
Yeah, let's go that route, and then
Start there.
we'll go.
Okay.
I have some feedback myself.
Okay. So if you want me to share my scores with you, the top score was a 99 for LMP. And second place was Capital Land, that came in at 98.2. So I kind of consider them pretty much a dead even in a sense. Third place for me was Down to Earth at a 92. The other individuals that are below that mark, I personally am not considering them in my view, so I'm not going to spend the time to talk about them, unless you want me to. But those three, LMP, Capital Land, and Down to Earth, my pick, if that's where you would like to start, just get right to it, is capital land management. The reason I picked them is a couple things, though LMP and capital land are very similar. Capital land just seemed to have an extremely healthy financial balance sheet. Their commitment to fertilization to the property was definitely much higher than the other two in that top three. That's something that's lacking on this property and has been lacking on this property for quite some time, is the management of the turf itself. I'm hoping with the funds that they're committing to that, that it's something that we can improve out here, because it definitely needs it. You can easily drive the property, especially up and down H and Oaks, and see plenty of stressing turf, and it's been stressing for a long time. So the unfortunate downside in down to earth's world is they attempted, I think, in my opinion, to make it right. And I don't know if it's personnel, I don't know if it's upper management. Yeah, I know they've changed CEOs, I know they've changed branch managers. 5, 6, 7 months ago, I sent out a pretty scathing letter to them to straighten up their act. And they sent in everybody from the company to address that, and it didn't last very long. So I just don't honestly think if we stick with them that they're going to improve from where they stand today. That's my fear of staying with our current contractor.
Thing that stood out to me, apart from the price and those other things, is the fact that capital land management committed to 18 personnel.
17.
17 FTEs. And currently, we only have 13, so there's another 4 bodies that properly managed, gives you a lot more work, almost a 30% increase in availability to do the work. So without a 30% increase or 20% increase in costs, because of more bodies.
Well, in the RFP, Jack, I was the sole person that wanted to put in a line that said you had to have a minimum of 15 bodies on the property. I already knew it was going to raise eyebrows, and it did, because that's a hard commitment financially, and in today's employment world, I know it's tough, but this is a gigantic property that requires a lot more than 8 bodies, unless you have 8 supermen, which has yet to been here since way back when in the Vivicon days. So that line was lined out. So that's not a hard number that the company that's chosen must put 15 plus bodies on the property, because that was lined out of the RFP, which I kind of expected would have been, but I just wanted to make it known that you can't show up here with 7, 8 guys. In the winter, we talked about this with the contractors during the meeting. Obviously, in your slower season and your mowing is every other week, you can adjust your personnel base. Makes sense to me. But in the summer, I've been here since 2004. I've watched it get away from 3 different companies 3 different times, and when it gets away, it's gone. No one's been able to bring it back when it got away. And it's away right now, in a sense, so it's going to be a hard tough in the beginning. But that's expected from a new contractor that's brought into the property anyhow. We're going to have a bit of a curve. There's going to be a learning process. But I'm not confident in where we stand, in my opinion, with Down to Earth. LMP, to talk about them, I know some of the people there personally. I like everybody that I know there personally. I like the fact that they're right around the corner. That's a plus. Capital Land Management's based in Lakeland, if I am correct about that, but I understand that there's a Tampa branch that the personnel will be fed out of. And they did put that 17 number in there for what that's worth. You know, that obviously ultimately all of it remains to be seen, but I'm into Capital Land Management's corner for the choice of contractor, from my view.
And there were some that did not commit to a 5-day week.
Yeah, ASI, even though the RFP called for a 5-day-a-week plan, only put a 4-day-a-week plan in there. So that was a mark against them right off the bat.
I think some of them do that from my conversations, just so they have leeway with rain days and things like that, so they can come back. But
Yeah, well, and like down to earth, and contractors in the past, if they get rained out or they have weather, which we have every single year, they'll make it up on a Saturday sometimes, you know? So there are Saturday makeup days a lot when necessary, but maybe so. But the RFP specifically called for a 5-day, and it only showed up with a 4-day in ASI's column. So that's kind of a summary where I'm at. If you guys have any specific questions for me or whatever, I can answer for you.
I have just a little bit of feedback, so just after looking at, I talked to John and asked him what his initial assessment was. He talked about a lot of the same stuff he just mentioned. So I did a little digging into the primary companies he was looking at, and Bexley was just awarded from LMP to Capital Land. And there's another couple of examples of that same thing where LMP lost the business. So I think there's some sort of service issue going on there. When I did talk to LMP, they said it was more of a bidding price thing. It's really difficult for me to come behind and say that that's why. But I did get a little deeper with one of, what company are you with? Yeah, with the Rosetta company. Like you talked to the guy I spoke with, there's a little bit of feedback on service concerns. This is a guy that actually goes behind all these maintenance companies and he inspects what they do and asks them to maintain their contract. And he said he would not, in any circumstance, go with LMP. So I know this person personally. I think he was a good assessor of the issue. So I'm also with John on Capital.
So I've worked with most of these companies over the past 15 years or so. Just to give you my rankings, actually lines up very, very similar to John. I did have LMP ranked in the top spot with 96, and then I have Capital Land Management at 85, and then the other ones were slightly less. So I kind of considered those as the top two as well. I guess what was most important to me being kind of in this business is that and I'll tell you, I lean towards LMP for these reasons. This is a big property. Landscaping is very challenging. I think we all know that. My concern, I think, what helps me feel a little bit more comfortable with LMP, and I have experience with LMP in different communities, but I think that we really need a company with a large local presence, and not just their office, but if you look at the 10 communities that they listed, generally speaking, a lot of them are nearby, and some of the ones that are nearby are also very big properties like ours. I know recently they were awarded Watergrass 2, which was primarily, and Down to Earth was in Watergrass 2. So they were awarded that project, and the sole and the primary reason why they wound up getting that particular job was because of the good work that they had done in Watergrass 1. So they've been there for a number of years. Watergrass 2 had Vivicon, went to Down to Earth, things weren't looking great, and eventually they went through the process and they transitioned. But there were, something that we don't usually have is we had a joint meeting recently with the HOA, and we had people that came in and were speaking to the ability for LMP that they had turned around Watergrass 1 and those sorts of things. So I'm going off pace here, but I think the biggest thing to me, what's most important, I want to know that if we have a landscaper here, that they have additional resources close by that they need to get folks, because something's going on here or there's some performance issues. I want to make sure that we can get people there. And I think we have that ability with them having an office literally a mile and a half, 2 miles away, as well as they're in Watergrass 1 and 2 every day. They're in Northwood down that way. They're in Heritage Isles. They're in Corey Lake. And again, most of those are pretty complex communities. In fact, with Watergrass 1 and 2, another thing that's important to me is that is a Crown Development community, has a lot of similar landscaping, slightly newer, but there's something to be said for that as well. So, and not a knock against Capital Land Management. I don't have as much experience with them, But what I do know is that they aren't necessarily as locally based. And I think that if you want my opinion, and I worked with Down to Earth in a couple communities, and to me, I think one of the biggest problems with them, and again, they did some good things as well, but I think one of the biggest problems was that they were primarily based out of Orlando. They were definitely trying to expand the business in Tampa, can't fault for that, but I think that those sorts of distances can cause a little bit of a disconnect, and that just makes me concerned, especially if I've got two companies that are right close together. So I look at it as a little bit of an edge to the local person.
I would have to kind of agree with John's assessment. When I did my analysis, I kind of came up with capital land as one. LMP came at two, then Down to Earth, and then there, everybody else kind of fell underneath. But I kind of agree with Andy because I know LMP is literally, right around the corner. When I looked at capital land, like you said, there in Lakeland, I think it is, or Canonas, or something like that. Lakeland. You have a crew who has to be here, at 8 o'clock, from Lakeland, that's, well, these guys are right around the corner. So, I would say if we're gonna, look at, if we're looking at everything, I think those two for me are the 1 and 2, but, I would switch 1 for 2, 2 for 1. So.
Yeah, and just to
I
clarify,
think Capital would have local people here from Tampa, not people.
I was told that Capital has a Tampa location, that they have a crew based in Tampa, not just Lakeland. I have not verified that. I don't know if we can or ask, or even if they're here, I have no idea. But I was told that that the Tampa location will be the home base. That's all I know. I haven't verified it.
Sorry to interrupt and go out of order, but one thing I failed to mention, I think could be important, is two of the properties recently, Astoria and Meadow Point 4. Meadow Point 4, for example, they gave 1 week notice when they were not awarded the bid. With Astoria, they just walked off the job. So I feel like it's a small world. LMP is right around the corner, but what I don't want is a company that's proven locally recently to just not give notice and leave them high and dry after however long of a contract they've had. So that was one thing that stuck with me based on my conversation. So I didn't want to not say that, but sorry.
I'm sorry, but what you just stated is blatantly false. So you're misinformed, and it's a shame that you're misinformed by a management company.
I think we should continue to review the bids as presented and use the criteria. Ultimately, each board member will fill out a criteria sheet based on this evaluation criteria, and the numbers will be tallied and the board will discuss. So we'll stick to the
Sean, anything else you want to add?
That's it.
Jack?
That's why I think my original statement on commitment to personnel, if we've had one thing that's been consistent over the years is when you didn't have the bodies, quality went down. And you could bring in people on a short-term basis, but if they came back to a lower-run crew, you suffered. So the company's making a commitment to put in up to 17 FTEs. That's a major commitment. The fact that they have some deeper pockets, and so they're not, if they run into a problem, it's not like we don't have the money to fix it or to back up our those are the two strongest things to me.
Capital Land Management was my number one. They scored a 99. The second one was LMP at 98, but my pick was Capital Land.
You guys all pretty much finalized the scorecard at this point?
If we turned into you,
Yeah, we can tally them up, unless you guys want to have any other additional conversations, but it sounds like everybody's already gone through the proposals and regs. We're gonna do all this much on does it report, so.
Let's see.
we go through tallying the process with these, I'm gonna go ahead and let John begin on your tab one with the field operations update and start working on some of those items.
Okay, quick update. Well, let me back up just 2 steps to answer the pool question, if we can. I'm not real clear on the dates that you mentioned, if you were addressing the fact that the pool would be ready by September, October, or if they would be at a certain stage by those times.
My understanding was the temporary stuff was going to be in and operating by then.
Yeah, they're back Monday, this upcoming Monday, to actually do the temporary part of the filtration system. So this week, the pool should be backfilled, temporary filtration in place, and then they go over to start on the other backpacks. So that has yet to come. They've drained the pool, they've cleaned the pool, but they have yet to install the temporary filtration and obviously refill it.
So that's scheduled for like plus or minus beginning next week.
That's correct. Yeah, they'll be back here on Monday to start on that part of the
So
project.
it'll be, the pool will be filled and the filtration, the temporary filtration, not right by Wednesday, Thursday.
Well, there'll be 2 stations that will filter the pool temporarily. It'll run 24/7 right now.
But they obviously, if they still got to fill it, they got to connect it, they do it, it's all on the same day.
Well, they're not connecting anything that's over there in the hole, as I call it. Obviously, everything's gonna be separate from
Yeah,
that.
I saw
So
that.
everything will be on the deck. So it's very simple for them to actually
I
connect.
look at it like this, I see what they're doing.
Yeah, once they get the filtration set up and the pool filled back, they're gonna start over there. Obviously gutting that and doing their job.
How long does the pool usually take to fill up?
2 days. Yeah, because we have 5, I think it's 5 locations we can feed from. It takes about 2 days. That help you? Okay.
So Wednesday, Thursday is.
But let me interject just a second. I wouldn't put pressure on the company to fill up the pool this week. They still have to do a pressure test to make sure there's no underground pipes that are still broken. So if there is, they can't fill the pool back up unless those pipes are fixed. So first they have to analyze that.
Have they done one of those yet?
No,
Not yet.
that'll be done this week, Monday.
And the chlorine wash and the acid wash.
They didn't acid wash yet, but they did do a bleach wash.
Yeah, it's been
Once
clean.
everything's cleaned and before it gets filled up again, they'll do an acid wash.
Yeah, they don't want to do the acid wash until you get ready to fill it right now, because then you eat too much of the service.
And whenever they fill it up, then those fences go away and the barrier tape goes around.
Well, we don't know if we're gonna take those fences away, we're gonna discuss that to see if that's something the board wants to do, because the pool's still gonna be swimmable. And do on a liability standpoint for the contractor, we would need a waiver of liability if we were to do that, but then he has to drain the pool again. To start the second phase, the fence has to go back up,
Gotcha.
so it's a decision the board will make, yeah.
Okay, so back to landscape updates, cul-de-sacs and Pinecrest and Four Sheds are complete. I don't know if you've gone over to see them, but they're finished. They're all landscaped, mulched, completed, so that project's off the books. Blind spots on Ancient Oaks Boulevard are complete, the ones that we had scheduled. We're still moving forward. We'll work farther north on Ancient Oaks Boulevard for a few more blind spots we have there. Then we'll go down Eagleston to focus on those, and we have one more to focus on over here by the medical buildings just south of the clock tower. That'll ultimately take care of all the blind spots on the property. So
They're lowering 6 inches or so.
well, sometimes we're completely removing the landscape, the bushes and so forth, depending on its location.
I got a question for you, John. So I know if you're going north, right before Eagleson, there's a lot of construction areas. When is that going to be?
That's done.
That's
Yeah, the center medians are done. They're landscaped inside and done.
It looks good, and I've heard a lot of good comments on it.
Good. I'm gonna skip mulching right now on my little line. I'll come right back to that. Landscape RFP, we just talked about that, so we don't need to talk about that. Fairgate, we talked about this a couple meetings ago, that we wanted to maybe start redesigning some of these entrances. Fairgate was the choice. So you can look at the 2 images that are there. The lower image, of course, is just a computer-generated image. But the idea is to reduce what you're looking at there in the first photo of Fairgate, that gigantic bush line, and just bring it down to a more simple entrance, landscape at the entrance. So it's just an artist's rendering of what we're looking to possibly do there.
The bushes will go.
Yeah, that giant bush that you see there, Fairgate, on both sides of that sign will vanish, and then we'll replant. Yeah, we're gonna the flower bed has morphed out of position over the years. If you can tell the front, so it'll all be pushed back, all put back into place. So I just wanted to give you a visual of what we're thinking to see if you guys are on board with that, and ladies are on board with that. If you feel good about it, then I'll move forward, on this project.
I like it, but in my head, I keep hearing more color. So I'm wondering, would you have perennials that would provide color throughout the year, somewhere outside of those, just the annuals?
At the entrances, no, but monies were granted this season to add color to the main boulevards.
Okay.
Ancient Oaks, Mystic Oaks, Eagleston. So more colors planned for the main boulevards, because they're pretty green right now, but there's not a lot of color. So money was granted for that. At the entrances, the idea is just to have the annual beds still of your color and just greenery still on the back. So no, there was no other plan to add any, can always be done if you guys like, but that was the concept that you're seeing there.
What would be the difference between having just a kind of green bush and putting a flowering perennial?
Well, I don't know. Obviously, visually, it would be different.
We're down to three changes a year.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, our annuals were down to 3 changes a year instead of 4. So the idea of this flower bed that you see, which has morphed into a small little oblong looking thing now, it's gonna be put back in position, be much larger, more centered. So actually, that would be a much larger presentation of the flower bed than it is today.
Sometimes I would say it's a good thing for John to ask with the lawn about the landscape maintenance people, but sometimes if you want a certain size, the flowers are right above it, so all you're doing is always cutting off the flowers, which is ridiculous.
I'm thinking
But
of the
maybe it could
outside,
work.
where the wings of this, where you're kind of putting those new bushes, but to me, I would say, kind of listening to the comments, I agree, where we have a lot of green, and there we have beautiful perennials that, whether it's flowering or just color.
So who helps you pick the things, or who's?
Well, we'll work with them. There's a landscape architect here that I've been working with. So we just generated this after a couple tries, actually, we came up with this. But we can do more. We can always present more ideas. But we just want to move forward with something and change what we have.
Love the new design.
Yeah, I definitely like the new design.
It looks good. Is it a trial only in Fairgate?
Yes, right now, the Fairgate's the only target to redo until we kind of get where we want to be. Okay, any questions on that? All right, let me back up to the mulching. Mulching of the property is finished. We did not use down to earth to mulch the property this year, so we did not use our landscaper. We went out and shopped it out and got it done from a company for $16,350 less than we paid last year. I think they did a great job. It was spread by hand. You guys probably all saw it going on. So it was a little bit of work to figure out which way we were going to go on that project, but we decided to use this contractor. They did a great job. They were timely. They were awesome. They were respectful to the community. We learned some things because it was their first time on the community. Next year, probably be a little smoother, even though it was pretty smooth this year. But it did save about 16 grand on what we spent last year to mulch this property. So that's a plus. On that subject, there is mulching budgeted every year. We want to mulch later next time than at the end of this rainy season. We ran into a bunch of gushy stuff, which we typically do. So we're going to push it into October, late October, November next year. So that means the monies that you have budgeted this year, which ends in October next year, I'm not going to use them. I'll use next year's money when we mulch. So you're gonna have a little surplus available.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because we have lots of things happening, tools, so forth. So that $100,000 plus number won't be utilized this year on mulch. We only mulch once a year. So we just did it, obviously. So we're gonna wait till October, November next year to do our annual, which means next year's budget. So the budgeted money that's in the kitty this year, I don't need it. So we can use it in other areas, you know, that can be done. I would like to do that just for the water mud factor that we experience in kind of the end of the rainy season. That's my goal. So we'll have a little financial plus this year in our corner. And then we'll just start doing it every year, November. Okay. If anybody disagrees with that train of thought, then that's what we're gonna go forward with.
We could switch from 2 to 1 time of year.
That's a while ago, Jack.
5 years?
Yeah, at least 5 years. I'm gonna say at least 5 years.
I haven't seen really a degradation.
No, I mean, at the end, it starts getting, you know, of course, starts getting a little thin, but, I don't think to the point where you have to go back to twice a year, in my opinion.
That's another, what, 80-some thousand?
Over 100. Yeah, over 100.
Over 100.
Yeah, for all the parks, the main roadways. Okay. So, I have a third, I can't read my own damn notes. I have no idea what that is, so I'm gonna skip it.
Sure happens.
I'll come back to it. Okay, so in mulching word, we're done. We're done till next year. We're looking November, which means we're not gonna utilize the funds that are budgeted this year, so they can go somewhere else if need be. Okay? Street trees. Street trees have been mulched, trimmed, sprayed the second time. So now everybody knows we're moving on of that subject to the homeowner versus the district. The only thing that hasn't been done, because this is simply a timing thing, is the replacement of the dead trees that currently exist. There's 46 of them that are still out there. That I have a proposal to replace them. It didn't come into last year's budget. It can easily come into this year's budget to replace those 46 dead ones. Because as we all discussed, we don't want to hand over a dead tree to the homeowner.
Just a quick question, I know we talked about this, so have we talked with the homeowners for those 46?
I have not knocked on those 46.
That was my question too, because I know a lot of people didn't want them.
Yeah,
So
so
why replace them?
I have no problem knocking on those doors. If you want me to take that route first,
If we could do that first, I think that would be great, because what is it, about $1,200 a tree?
they could take it.
So,
So we could save,
if we could save some money there, I think if we could do that.
if they don't want to.
Correct.
Right.
How tight are we in to the county's numbers for how long? Or are we free of that?
No, my understanding, we are free of that, Jack. Yeah.
Okay. So in that process, is there, maybe we could drop a letter or something that says, you know, we're trying to reach out to you? This-
Well, I have that in my notes here, that since we've kind of completed our phase of it outside of replacing these possible 46, communication to the homeowners, you know, you guys got to get that out there, obviously, that now they're no longer ours, they're yours. You know, I know it's been talked about, but that physical notice needs to go out.
Yeah, I thought we said once the trimming happened, we were gonna get that notice out, to the homeowners. Is that still correct, Taylor?
The notice was sent out in January or February, and it was gonna go to SOPA.
Announced it, but needs to be reiterated.
Yeah, I don't personally recall if it was CDD, SOPA, whoever was going to do the, okay, it's finally done announcement, you know.
But I think we need to guard against a wholesale move on the part of the citizens who are a little picked about the tree they have. Quickly, just, I want to take it out, and all of a sudden, we're denuding our community.
But that's gonna be more of a SOPA issue.
Well, it's gonna be a social issue, and I'm just trying, I don't want to have the DRC committee all of a sudden find 50 or 60 tree removal requests and that could have an effect on the community, so.
Just to be clear what you said, and I'm sorry for the interruption, you said that you would give them the option to not have a tree replaced. So if I have a tree that's dead in my yard, the CDD would say, if you don't want it, we won't replace it?
Correct.
But wouldn't that break the covenant rules for CDD placement in front of houses?
That's what I was asking, whether how tied we are to the county's final number for how many years. Do we have to stay within 5% or 10% of that?
I think to my knowledge, based on our last conversation, we were within, that threshold for the amount of trees on the property.
Yes, I don't think it breaks any rules.
Yeah, I think it does.
I don't see the county coming out and doing a count, but I don't want to go into a community and all of a sudden see 30% of a neighborhood's trees gone. You know, that's gonna have they're a little bit more care was taken than putting some of the trees in deed to get credit for. But certainly dead trees, it should be a consultation.
So wouldn't that be Suncoast's letter to the community saying, this is now our process, if you have any suggestions for changes or whatever needs to be approved?
That's definitely good.
Based on the way this whole tree program is handled, to come up with this now, you're going absolutely against what you told everybody for the last 5 years. Then you're gonna get a zillion people wanting to live trees. You're asking for trouble to do it the way you're talking about it. You have to give us a thought.
I'm concerned about a lot of people who, once you start seeing trees come out, more people will join them.
And a lot of people said, you have to have it, this is what you have to do, and then do it twice, and it's just the nature of that whole program.
Well, that's really a SOPA issue, I think, now. It should be written pretty well. It says, if you want to make changes, it needs to be approved, otherwise you're responsible for replacing a dead tree or whatever. Cool. So that's not something we can decide, but I get what you're saying.
Well, whatever it is, I don't know the specific procedure.
I think I would encourage
That's gotta be
people
addressed.
to replace a tree, not to just totally take it out of it, especially if there's one dead, in consultation.
And that's what's been communicated at previous CDD meetings. At previous SOPA meetings, they've communicated the same thing. They've said, you can fill out an AMR form to have it removed, but you need to replace it with one of the approved trees.
Right.
If you were to make a letter that says, do you want us to replace it, and have the option not to have a tree, it would go against what SOPA is saying, and it would go against the covenants.
Well, we have a whole community that does not have trees. That's another issue.
Yep, I agree.
So is that SOPA business then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Once I cut it off, but,
Yeah. That's, yeah.
okay. John,
Okay, so-
anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple more quick things. Sidewalk trip hazards, you can just kind of read this real quick, but all the parks and villages have been addressed. We're just gonna move now on the north of the power line easement on Ancient Oaks Boulevard and the main boulevards to keep addressing sidewalk trips. But I do need clarification, as you can see there, on sidewalks that are in front of a home. Because in your covenants, as you can see that are highlighted there, that the homeowner is responsible for the sidewalk. Because I have people that want me to repair sidewalks in front of their home. And I want a clarification from the board that the district is not responsible for that, or is the district going to take that responsibility?
What if that's caused by a tree that's put in?
As little as they are right now, I don't know if they're.
Well, yeah, I just,
It was always interpreted, the maintaining of it was getting slime and green mold and things like that off. It was a physical alteration of the sidewalks. That grinding was always done by the CDD.
Well, I'd be happy to take either direction, I just want direction.
So when you say repair, so is it cracked, is it buckled up, what is it?
Could be either or, it could be a trip that we just grind down, or something I gotta tear out and replace.
Anything but cleaning, really.
That's correct, anything but cleaning.
I think based on that, I think this has been done, especially in my neighborhood before, where we've actually come and grind down the sidewalk to remove the trip hazard. I think that's been done in the past.
It has.
Yeah.
That's why,
Excessively.
yeah,
So I would say
No.
we've done it in the past and it's to reduce the trip hazard. That's,
Former board member had brought up the fact that the sidewalks are homeowner responsibility as this reads. So that's why I'm asking you five tonight. Where do you want me to take that? Do you want me to replace and grind and repair as needed and homeowners simply clean and scrub and keep it from being sloppy?
Aesthetics was homeowners, mechanical aspect of it is the CDDs. We still own the sidewalks.
Okay.
Right, so make sure it's still our side.
it's still outside.
It's our side liability, yeah.
Okay.
And I agree with that as well, because that's what's been done.
So if I have a trip or I have a cracked sidewalk or a broken sidewalk, CDD is gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay,
Do we need a motion on that?
I don't know, it's not like it's anything different than we've already been doing, so. no reason to.
No problem.
but I got three more things on, on the item. The first one's the pressure washing. Because we have a couple of proposals for the pressure washing contracts coming up for renewal. Do we want to keep our current contractor? Do we want to change? There were two other contractors that presented their proposals outside of our current one. And we just have to make a decision if the board wants to make this decision or the board wants me to make this decision on which contractor we want to go forward with from here on out. So Extreme Concrete Cleaning, are you here?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there you are. Is the other gentleman who has cleaned the property in the past and is not currently cleaning the property, but has made a presentation to clean the property. He's on average, he's $6,200 less a year. He's physically doing more work than the former contractor or the current contractor we have.
Yeah.
The only thing in his world, this gentleman's world, is that he has a 3-year cancellation cost. So if you cancel before 3 years pass, it's a $10,000 cancellation cost. So I don't know if the board wants to consider, I'll give you my straight out opinion. I think we should change contractors and move forward with Extreme Concrete Cleaning, just down here. Because I think, number one, it's a lot less money. Number two, he's been on the property before. He did do a good job. And now he has am I correct, you have a process that's even better of keeping the curbs and the sidewalks cleaner longer.
And that's every 6 months, am I correct?
Annual. It's an annual contract.
No, I'm saying that's where the cleaning is concerned.
He'll clean the entire property once.
Okay.
And then is it every 6 months? Yeah, every 6 months you resurface, and then he's on call as needed, should we have something arise.
But you've got that proprietary.
Right. And it's $6,200 less than what we pay today.
Annually, yes.
My only concern would be the 3-year clause. I mean, we would basically be binding future elected officials to a decision that we're making. That's one problem. The other problem is with all our contractors, we typically have our attorney write 30-day out. Because, with all due respect, if something goes wrong in the first year and for some reason it's not great, then we're gonna have to either pay $10,000 or we're gonna have to stay going on for an additional 2 years. And again, I'm not saying that it would be bad, but if something did go bad, that's why you have these sorts of outs, especially as a governmental board. That's my thought.
The reason why we did that is, I don't know if we discussed it last time.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is we've gone through communities like this, and to do the maintenance program, we've got to put a lot of money and time in it up front. We'll get it clean, and it'll always be clean. But what we've had is literally people come in, hire us to do it. After we've done it in 6 months, we're like, thank you, we'll see you. So we end up, and we do that all the time, we're gonna be out there working all the time for free. So I mentioned to John, we're flexible on how we handle it. We just can't come in, do all the work, clean it up. You have someone say, oh, you're bidding on this, sure, we'll bid on it, it's perfectly clean, we'll do it dirt cheap because it's already clean for us. And that's what this company, this other subdivision did to us. And so the pressure washers give a great price, which is gonna, because they're gonna come through and rush through everything because it's already clean. So that's all we're trying to do is prevent ourselves from that happening. We can change it and work out something where we're covered somehow or something, initially. It could be a little bit more per year, and then reduce it per year to if you do go 3 years, or we could, we can do something. We're flexible on that. That's the only reason why, the cancellation fee is not carved in stone and really not a big issue.
So I would say for us to move forward, we have to probably just remove that completely rather than saying we might negotiate there. Would that be?
That's fine. We'll go, I've worked with John and Bob, and
John can be tight.
yeah, we're fine with it. So,
No, we're not interested in using you to stuff up the community and then look for somebody cheaper for the second, third year. That's.
My recommendation,
We're looking at $18,000 fixed amount now, cheaper than we would have paid, so.
do you all have to put it out for bid every year, or would we
No.
continue to do it most likely as long as there's no?
Our fee has to be over 100, 300.
And I think more importantly, you don't know the history, but the board can affirm that generally speaking, the vendors that we've had here, if they're good vendors, they stay for a long time. Even with landscaping, I mean, Vivicon, down to earth, with a little bit of an interruption, they've been here for decades. It's just, so, that's the history of the board.
We're fine with removing it, and totally.
Sounds unanimous then.
my recommendation to the board is change to extreme concrete cleaning. If he's willing to remove that 3-year, so be it, and just write the contract that way.
All right, so it's based on like a 4-zone schedule. Where are we at on that, and what would we have to do to cancel our current contract?
Well, the current one has ended, we will just give them notice, because it was just an annual, has not been renewed yet. So that would just.
So I'll make a motion that we move forward and just have the attorney draft Henry.
And authorize John to cancel the current agreement.
Yes, that as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. John, if you're okay with it, do you mind if I pause you for a second
Yep.
to go through the landscape?
That's no problem.
Closing so we can release everything? All right, so switching gears. We got the pens handy. All right, so total rankings, total points awarded. First place, we have CLM, Capital Land with 463 points. LMP in second place with 440. Down to Earth in third place with 379. ASI in fourth place with 350. Pine Lake in fifth place with 349. And Fieldstone in sixth with 324. So congratulations, Capital Land Management. So we'll look for a motion from the board then to adopt the rankings and authorize the contract.
Yes, award the contract.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tom, second by Jack, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, all.
Thank you guys all for attending tonight.
Thank you.
You all understand this is just the beginning.
Hey, John, remember comes back to you.
When does that take place?
$15,000 carrot, can you talk to that or whenever?
I can. I mean,
To finish earlier, if that's no change.
I can. I don't know whether or not. I would have. I've been working hard to meet it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing those clean, sidewalks. I live here, so yeah. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Don, we'll talk.
Thank you.
Taylor, we're
done with that one?
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, I'm not, give you.
So I got two quick things. The last thing on my list, I can just really skip the EGIS site inspection, because Taylor and I have been handling that. It's really not that important to discuss. The road repaving of Summergate Boulevard and Ancient Oaks Boulevard up to the north roundabout. The only reason that's here is that we just gotta start moving on it so we can plan it. And I'm pretty confident saying this, that the funds are there in the reserve.
the rainy season.
Yeah, we're out of the rainy season, so we just gotta start focusing on getting that RFP done and getting the bids in.
And we'll be talking about HA5 under my report, and then we'll blend into this conversation.
All right, I have a question. One question that the gentleman in the back there brought up. Speed tables. I know we talked about that 5 months ago.
It'll be in my report.
Okay. And John, anything on the parks? I think there was Springwood and
Stone Creek.
Stone Creek.
Stone Creek was delayed weather next week. They're back out to go back to work on Stone Creek and finish it. Weather permitting, but that should not be an issue because we're kind of moving out of the rainy season. The rain has just simply pushed us back. Springwood is next. That'll be the next part that we'll address. They got to finish Stone Creek first. They just got delayed. Couldn't do anything. It was too wet, too muddy.
Okay. I just went over there yesterday and I stepped on it.
Oh yeah, it's still mushy.
You're talking about the flooding, not the actual park infrastructure.
Yeah, the flooding itself. So the Springwood Park, it was completely underwater for a month and a half. And when you step on it looks good, but when you step on it, it goes.
Okay, I got two quick items. This one's not on the agenda because it came up kind of late. I have a good handful of residents that always want me to eradicate all the wildlife, all the plant material in a pond. So it's just nice and clear, no vegetation. Nobody belligerent by any means, but that's just their request. So I reached out to Nick, who's our consultant at Solitude Lake, to get his input on this concept. Because I was not clear that as Seven Oaks, can we do whatever we want with our ponds, or are they mandated to do certain things in the ponds by the state? The answer was we can do whatever we want in our pond. We could wipe out all the vegetation if we want. But they do not recommend that. And in this letter, I handed it to you there, the highlighted response from Nick. The company's recommendation is not to eradicate beneficials that are in ponds because they serve a purpose. The invasive plants, they already address. They knock them out, eradicate them as need be. But the example that I have is a homeowner in the village of Edenfield that for many years, former management eradicated the pond and just like wiped out all the plant material for him. I've never been a fan of that. I've always fought that concept because I understand keeping the beneficials and what they do. So this gentleman's kind of back on me about wanting his pond cleaned out. There's no vegetation in it.
Well, don't most of these ponds have like a littoral shelf at one end that you
Yes.
have to have some
Yes.
grasses in there to filter?
Yes, sir. And some we actually add vegetation to try to help the filtration of them. But this gentleman wants me to completely wipe out his pond as former management had done in the past. And we've had nice conversations. He's a super nice man, but he's not happy that I haven't done that yet. And I've tried to tell him that I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to let the board decide tonight if we should continue the path of only eradicating invasive as our contractor recommends and keeping beneficials because they do serve a purpose in the pond.
I mean, and that's not just our contractor recommending that. I mean, these ponds are meant to treat the runoff water, and part of how that's done is through this native vegetation that's supposed to be there. I'm sure Tommy would agree. I see her shaking her head. So, and I'll tell you, just as a comparison, I get this question all the time. I'm sure Taylor does as well. And we had to agree, in fact, with Solitude State gave the same advisement, and residents kept coming and kept pressuring the board, and the board wiped out a good portion of it. And
within 6 months, instead of getting flooded with phone calls about vegetation, I was getting flooded with phone calls about the algae. And they had to pay a lot of money to put everything back in, because that was really the only solution. So,
You need to put an education program on your website about stormwater management, best management practices. And this board has heard this conversation from me multiple times. It's like, I think that just needs to disseminate information back into the community as to why these ponds are there and the importance of the plant material being incorporated into the system.
I might have something I can actually send you that's basically what you just
Oh, I got a
described.
whole bunch of stuff.
And I was gonna say Solitude or anybody else that
You need to
is
get a whole
affiliated
bunch of it.
with stormwater systems probably can send you the same.
Absolutely.
So I would say is there a limit though? Because I have already heard it from my neighbor since I'm on the board. She's like, this used to be 2 ponds. And I used to go to see all across both. That's why we paid 10 grand more for water on property and all stuff. Now it's all grown up because most of it becomes to like a little business and then gets bigger again. But that's all grown up in the woods. But now there's like grass, like we just showed. At what point does that cover the whole? I mean, it's not gonna cover the middle because that's 17 feet deep, but
Not always.
but in our case, so is there too much? Like, is there a point where we would trim it back? Or no?
There can be an aesthetic too much if a pond has like, you'll see some ponds, not here probably, but in other places that have lily pads, and they might grow out to where it's taking up like 50% of the surface. And what they might do is rake back or treat the lily pads to bring it back so that it's not the whole surface, but.
Pond management companies should be able to make those decisions. They get it. They really do get it.
Yeah, because my answer to that, Tom, would be, I need to know what pond it is. We'll go out, we'll assess, let the company assess the pond, see what they recommend and what they say. Because the littorial shelf should have planting on it. The non-littorial shelf area typically doesn't, depending on the pond size. Sometimes it breaks loose and it floats around, right? Finds its new home.
As one who does a lot of golf, I see both extremes. I see some places where you're in a nature environment and I'll have bigger than ponds, small lakes, where they've got grasses and cattails and so forth on one side, but they look neat. I think what we don't like is the algae and the scum and that kind of stuff. If that goes through, the natural grasses actually look attractive. But if all you see is these pristine cutout ponds on golf courses where there's, they can control it, that's not good. That's not.
Well, I think district council has already told the board about the new regulation that's coming up, and that regulation that takes effect in July or whatever, which is strictly directly related to this. The state is fixing to do what we've been expecting them to do the past 30 years. They're going to make you responsible for your water quality discharge. Okay, period. You need to be prepared when they come knocking on your door to prove what you've done to be in compliance with your equipment transfer, your operating permit, and what you're doing to make sure you are not discharging highly polluted water downstream. You need to do the best you can, to educate your residents. This is going to get progressively more regulated over the next few years. It's going to get, because we've been talking about this for 30 years.
So am I understanding that the board supports the idea of a contractor?
Yes, sir.
Just to take that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just advise the homeowners, if they don't like it, just to come to the board meeting. Here for you guys.
You can still say, I'll look at it individually. And then escalate.
All right.
You can always call Taylor.
Or our new landscape.
I'm almost done. So I have a request. I'm requesting that the board authorize me to purchase a new golf cart. Golf cart I drive around is a 2011. And we did 3 new golf carts, if you recall, some time back. So I'm looking to get one at this time. You see the invoice there, $12,800, give or take. I'm sorry?
Tattoo, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Reference.
It's a much more versatile golf cart. It's a little more money than we spent for golf carts in the past. Same golf cart that,
Has it got a bed on the back of it?
yeah, geez, I lost the name of the
Probably
company.
familiar with the,
All right, Andy, I don't have to go through the whole thing. I was gonna teeter on the fact that I saved 17 grand on mulch, so we had to.
take a yes and you haven't signed it.
I know.
I'll second, you have to have these.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Is it a golf cart or a low-speed vehicle?
Neither.
Find out when it gets here.
Bring it up to John's house.
Thank you very
It'll
much.
be a Ferrari.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right.
Real quick, do you have an update on the board? Is she,
On what part of it?
I think John was just asking for some clarification. So personally, what I've heard from both of you is that it's going very well. I really like the feedback the new company is giving us. When there's something wrong or needs to be slowed down to be fixed properly, I think they're taking their time to do it right. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? I think it's worth giving a little update. And then as far as the carrots, maybe get done early, how interested are they in doing it?
My assumption is they're gonna push to get it done early and take that financial carrot that you put out there. It seems to me that that's the direction they're going. So far, what they presented to me in their plan of attack, they are on target to move forward with that. Obviously, you can see the pool physically is cleaned and drained. They'll go back to fill that temporary filtration, and then they're gonna start next week on the backpacks, starting to gut that problem and do the whole thing.
No, that's not the information I got.
You expect that?
January, yeah, so the information that I received from Tim was they're gonna start next week doing a pressure test to see if there's any broken pipes underneath that. Once they do that, they're gonna clean the pool, acid wash, and fill it with the temporary filtration. And he said he's coming back in December, January to start cutting out all the
Okay,
tanks.
so we have heard two different
So-
stories, so we're gonna verify that for the board.
I assume they're gonna empty those tanks if they're not already empty. Lift them out of there and build the proper footers.
That's correct. They're gonna gut that hole completely, put the proper footers in, and then put everything back.
I think there's
The pipes are underneath it, right? They gotta fix the pipes underneath there.
They'll cut all the pipe loose that's been added. They're gonna pull them out. They'll have them inspected. The units will be inspected by Pool Works to make sure there's no damage to the particular backpack units themselves. Because that was one of the unknowns in their proposal, if the actual backpack was damaged in any way. They don't know that yet until Pool Works examines them when they're pulled out of the hole. So if they're fine, they'll finish the hole, the footers, and then reset them. That's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell.
So to me, it sounds like that, the sooner we get that accomplished and inspected, the better, because if they have to order parts or whatever, I can see that delaying us for a while.
My assumption is that there's no problems with those units whatsoever. I don't really see, they didn't flood, the motors didn't go underwater, none of the interior got wet. So if there's any breakage, it might just be in the pipe itself. That's my guess.
But all that thing about the wrong mastic and glue, that's all anecdotal and that's. Have we had any follow-up with the insurance company to this point, or are they just sitting tight?
Yeah, I've been they got out and they did, they got an adjuster review it, right, send his report to the insurance company. At this point, I'm waiting for them to present their resolution.
Yeah. You have a feeling which way they're going?
No idea. I know they've reviewed and taken into consideration what Teresa compiled as far as our losses, so they know where our expectation lies, but I have not, he hasn't disclosed anything yet. I've talked to a couple people there, they keep telling me hold on. So. Well, I anticipate it should be pretty, probably, I mean, I think this week, or like Monday, Tuesday.
I would think it would really, I mean, I wouldn't be out making an offer until I see what's been done. You know, what actual work has to be expended over there. I know we don't have a contract, but, you know, could go beyond that or whatever. But they're still in the loop. They just make an appearance and they evaporate. They're still engaging.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Teddy and I talked about that whatever they do, they always want to try to haggle it down now.
Of course.
Delay.
That's expected.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have to start. Any questions on my report? COVID policy. Jack, would you like to?
Real quick on the splash pad,
Yep.
is it fixed or it's about to be fixed?
Splash pad is fixed.
Even though,
The Marseille, he came back and fixed it. And a good note is that we also ordered, I asked him about some putty that we can temporarily put in if the areas start to crack. We can do it ourselves. We just ordered it, so we don't have to wait for them to come to do an actual patch repair. So we wouldn't have to close the pool.
so how long do you think the repairs last? And how soon do we think it plan to replace it?
Well, the Marseille is fairly new. So I think it's like the second year. We just did the Marseille on those pools. But what's happened since we had to drain that pool so many times, areas are starting to crack in the laminate. So they've been just patching it, because that's supposed to be underwater all the time, so. But we have a couple of years on that, but, I actually asked the pool horse to give me a proposal anyway, just to
Wasn't
see.
that high?
The pool horse was the highest one that came in. No, you're talking about to do the whole splash pad. That was super high.
Yeah.
But we just got the boots, so that looks like that's perfectly fine. That'll last us years. I don't see any issues right now except for the deterioration of the Marseille.
Would you mind reaching out to a couple other companies that would replace that whole thing and get a quote?
Yes.
Just the name of somebody in case we can.
Yeah, I called, I have one quote from them, and then, I called Florida Play Structures a couple of times, and they haven't gotten back to me yet, but I'll call them again.
Hopefully we don't need anything soon, but if we do, we should.
Yeah, I have another one.
Teresa, I had a question on the holiday decorations. Is this a new company this year?
Yes.
Okay. 22, okay. It said he would credit the CDD back funds due to the fact that he overestimated or underestimated the height of the palm
He
trees.
underestimated the tall palm tree that we always lit up right in front of the ancient oaks. Well, his staff is not qualified to go on a lift that high. That's what he said. So he's not gonna get a lift and do that tree.
So they're just gonna keep it at 20
So-
feet or whatever.
So they're just gonna wrap the trunk and they're not gonna go all the way up to the
Okay.
front this year.
All right.
So he'll credit us back. I don't know how true that is,
The other
not
one,
going into a lift, because
30.
we've always had that tree come true, lit by other companies.
Did he want to go to 30,000 this guy, the other guy?
27.
27.
Okay, so can we move on to the builder policy? So Jack, I know, we worked with, the attorney on creating the policy. And the only question that we had is if we wanted to pay the full-time employees if we got COVID or if we had a quarantine due to someone in your family that had COVID. So that would be a decision that the board would have to make on that.
So I will say, Pasco County, the transportation has this policy that if you are vaccinated and you get COVID pay. If you are unvaccinated, you forgo pay. I'm kind of leaning towards following that. At least that would be mine. Because if you're vaccinated, you're not gonna be, the idea is you're most likely gonna have a shorter stint being sick, having to even quarantine. People can be sick with COVID for obviously months in the hospital. So then if you're gonna do the pay, what's the time frame?
You might offer like 10 days, I think, but what I see is more, if you're offering.
I'd be more apt to follow the Pasco transportation.
And I can say for my employer, they have followed suit as a number one. If you're unvaccinated, you will have to take vacation, sick, whatever is available, or not get paid. If you are vaccinated, you are getting paid. So it's 10 days or 14 days.
14 days.
I personally completely disagree with that. How are we supposed to ask someone about their medical treatment? That's a violation. And I don't think it's something that we want to legally get into. As much as the county is doing it, that's a HIPAA violation. You can't ask someone if they've been treated one way or another for their own medical stuff. I don't think that's our place. I would say we either need to come down at one way or the other. The vaccination, I don't think should be part of our decision.
I agree with that. It's only 3 people too, right? So.
John's staff and my staff, 3, so 8.
Like it's 8, so.
You have comment, right?
I'm sorry.
So just for clarification, the delineation here is we're talking about beyond normal sick time. Like you have a certain amount of sick time,
Right,
right?
in addition to-
There's a-
Right. Be separate from your PTO.
Gotcha.
So I don't know, we're gonna have to vote on this probably in a couple of votes or something, but, I would say we cover it for somebody up to 10 days that they get COVID. Regardless of vaccine, I don't think they need to quarantine if they're just exposed to somebody, because with any other sickness in our history, we don't quarantine if somebody in our neighborhood is sick with, you know.
And I just want to touch base on that subject because everybody has their own opinion on this. So my only concern with that is if someone in my household had COVID and I live with them and I come to work, which I would unless I had symptoms, is that going to scare away staffing and not want to work because I possibly could be exposing them because I'm home with somebody in my household that has COVID?
Well, I believe that there are guidelines on this, even though they have changed since the beginning of COVID or a year ago. And so as those guidelines evolve and change with what is learned as this goes on, that would probably be the best policy to follow, whatever those quarantine guidelines are. They have guidelines if you're exposed and you're vaccinated, if you're exposed and you're not vaccinated, and whatnot. So it would be up to each individual to know which policy to follow.
I'm pretty sure you got that in this policy too, as far as whether you come to work or not, that's separate, that's already addressed in this policy.
But if you get paid type of, because at one point people were saying that, well, no, if you were exposed, whether you were exposed or not exposed, if you don't have no symptoms, you're supposed to be coming to work. Well, that spooks out a lot of our employees here, knowing if they're basically, if they know I'm exposed because someone in my house will have it and I'm coming and working next to them,
I think
and they're gonna be saying, well, I'm putting them in danger.
I think that goes back to your point last month and probably the month before, I think we all deal with this, it's not going away. I think you make your decisions. If you're particularly at risk for something, and I'm with my wife who has the flu, you might not want to hang out with me either. I'm not saying it's the same thing, I'm just saying, I think at some point we have to take care of ourselves, however we would. If you feel like you're okay to come to work, my son had COVID, he had just lost sensitivity or smell. There was no other symptom, and typically when people are asymptomatic like that, they don't spread this thing. So there's lots of, I have COVID, there's not necessarily lots of all the time. You always spread it everywhere.
So Taylor, my question is, so what, if this is the policy that's in place, are we just wanting to know if we're gonna pay someone or not pay someone?
Exactly. So we already have a policy that is proposed here, and Jack and Teresa were tasked with putting together with it all. So, the question is, are we gonna pay full-time or any employees, how are we gonna structure it? But I think it's proposed with full-time employees, if they have to either quarantine for a positive result or, I think really, what we were discussing before, if somebody in your immediate household has a positive result, you need quarantine as well.
And that, to
You
me,
can do it
that's all
however you
personal
want,
because.
or you can just do it if that person has a positive test.
So
Really structure it however you want.
So if I have a positive test and Jack lives with me and he provides that positive test, we pay. Is that what you're asking?
You could do it that way, or you could demand that Jack has a positive test to be paid.
I think, in my opinion, I think the positive test rules here for the employee. If the employee has a positive test, that's fine. We really run into the risk that somebody's husband or wife gets COVID, and thinking of the policy that we say, okay, well, they don't have COVID, they don't have a positive test, but they're going to quarantine, so we're going to pay them for 10 days. And then on the 8th day they get COVID, now we're paying them for another 10 days. It's just a very realistic possibility.
Maybe they've been vaccinated or have already had it or whatever.
Correct,
So
yeah.
There's all this stuff, so.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable, if somebody has a positive COVID test and they're out, for them to be paid for their full-time employment.
For how long? Like, are you, so I would make a
So how long would be another?
to say 10 days, because wasn't that the standard we brought up before? So I submitted a positive test for 10 days.
So not the quarantine period for positive test.
Hasn't that changed? I mean, it changes overnight.
It would simplify things if we said with positive test, 10-day pay.
I will think that, but I think that's the cut and dry.
I'm sorry.
Does your policy take into account the type of test? And does it have to come from a doctor or from an individual? Can it be a test that comes from CVS? Or does it have to?
It's hard to get into a doctor to get a test now.
Yeah, doctor will see.
Forget it.
Yeah, CVS is not that difficult, though. So I would say it has to be something from CVS, because I could just.
Not an at-home test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be
Either a doctor or
facilitated by
a
someone.
yeah, doctor
Just can't be
or.
a self.
Right, so.
It can't be, let me go to Sam's Club and pick up a self-test and.
A third-party professional test.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
And you can stack them. So I can have COVID yesterday and I can have a COVID next month. So every first week.
I think it's one and done.
You're not making a distinction between full-time and part-time?
I mean, part-timers don't usually get sick time, do they?
No.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that's the difference there, unfortunately. If, for example, if somebody's working part-time, they only work 6 hours a week for whatever reason, if they get COVID, to give them 10 days off or something wouldn't be appropriate. If they don't get sick time anyway.
Right.
So we're saying they're not full-time people only.
Right, a positive COVID test, not quarantine, if you have someone in the house.
For clarification to the point that John brought up, I do think it should be limited to the one time.
Yeah. That's, okay. All right, so I'm gonna reiterate that, and then I'll let somebody make a first and a second, but 10 days of pay, if you have a positive test, the employee has to test positive, facilitated by a third-party professional testing source. Employee must be full-time, and it's only offered once that you can redeem this pay.
I'll make a motion.
That's Tom, second by Laura, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So that doesn't include quarantine if someone's in the household,
Anything else?
but we can still come to work.
CDD.
If you decide,
Look at the.
Yeah. I'm just making sure, I don't wanna put anybody in danger or in harm's way.
All right, I've been reminded we should probably just do a motion as well, in addition to that, to approve the full policy as proposed, with the addition of the COVID pay that we just approved.
I'll put a motion.
Second.
By Sean, second by Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Bruce, do you have any other items that you wanted to go?
Yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to discuss the fencing around the pool, and I know it's been talked about, if, once they drain it, get the water back in and put the temporary filtration, if we would keep the fence up, because we are paying about $1,400 a month to have that up there. And just put caution tape around it. There's two ways we can go about that, yeah, we can do that, but the contractors, would like the attorney to draw up a waiver of liability, because they also feel if kids were to jump in there and it's not, filtered right, or, there's no chlorine, they get sick, they don't want that responsibility to fall on them. So they would ask for that.
They want a waiver.
To release them from any liability if we were to do that, right?
is there a liability established against them right now?
Well,
Anyway.
we have, under a contract, we have liability, we have indemnification, hold harmless for them to do what they need to do. So if they think the fence is needed, if there's a hazard to remove it, I would question why we remove it.
Just it's a cost to the district, but we would have to put it back up again once they drain the pool again to do the rest of the work.
Which might be what, 2 months later?
Which might be, they said December, January, at this point to start that work.
I think unfortunately that's a cost of doing business, and the bigger risk is the liability
Right.
issues, regardless of whether, we're not gonna make liability, but regardless, we would get sued just as much as they would if somebody falls in there. So I'll make a motion that we keep it as is, and unfortunately pay the cost for 2 months or something.
Do we want to put up any banners around it, like coming soon, heat pools, opening soon, or, there was some talk about that?
No.
Okay. So just leave the fence, leave it as is.
I would say, how do we want to communicate? I think it's important to start telling people things are getting fixed, but I also don't want to jump the gun and say, oh, this stuff's fixed.
I actually put
It's
a
not.
post today on Facebook, so
I
that's.
saw that. So I think you're doing a good job of that. I don't want to announce like, hey, they're coming to fill the pool and it's gonna be filtered next week because you don't know
Right,
what happened.
right.
So I think
We talked about
Keep
maybe
it
putting
simple,
a
yeah.
sandwich sign or something on at some point that would say, coming soon, keep the pool, that, it just so that some people that aren't in there clued in, know.
like a small thing.
Yeah,
I think you might make people mad by doing that. I'll just be honest with you, people are cynical in nature, and if they come, I'm just devil's advocate, they come see a sandwich board sign and just say it's delayed for a couple months longer than you think. I mean, there's gonna be pictures of that on Facebook, and
yeah.
it's just my own opinion, I mean, I could be wrong, but people
Just
do
leave
tend
it
to be
as is.
cynical.
But I like the updates when things happen, so that was.
Yeah, I never say dates, I always say anticipating, I never give anybody dates.
I thought the updates have been helpful, and it's the right message, and, hopefully, people will, the opposite of the sandwich board, right? So people, when they see that it's filtered, they'll know things are happening, and you might get some positive from that, so.
And from a financial standpoint, if we get some help in the insurance, it would, doesn't, I mean, we're just trying to lessen their bill at this point. It's part of the expense.
Sure.
And I just wanted to touch base on, our employee handbook, creating a professional appearance for our employees. It's kind of just worded that way, it doesn't state anything, itemized, what do we consider a professional appearance? We all know what, our own minds what a professional appearance is. But now, we're starting to see, colored hairs, more and more tattoos, not offensive, but just tattoos, piercings in the nose, piercings on the side, piercing under the nose. I just want the board to make that decision on, because, once you hire somebody and then they do something, it's like, what do you do?
I think Disney relaxed their restrictions on it. I think we can do it. Disney just allowed tattoos, piercings, hair color. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, are you talking about clubhouse staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's not that big of a deal.
To me, like I say, everybody has their own opinion on what a professional appearance is, and things have changed over the years, so, I just wanted to just clarify that, because sometimes you do get people that come in and, of course, they're gonna judge or say something, but, I just wanna make sure that's all okay.
But if somebody's refused employment, or they perceive they're being refused for employment because of these things, would they have any, if there's a policy that we don't allow?
If you have a policy banning it, if you have other employees who have it, then they may have a question, but if your decision on hiring or not hiring somebody has to do more with their, the work responsibility, their experience, that would be the question as to, whether or not you have a policy and somebody or employees are permitted to have these different items. That question is sort of loaded, it depends on the facts. Because your employees could be very professional and have a piercing, and you could have an applicant who had a piercing that presented themselves unprofessionally, or, whatever, it's a little bit too subjective
So
to answer.
if we're okay with piercings and tattoos and stuff, could we also just clarify the dress code in some way so that at some point you cover enough of your body that it's a professional look?
Are they not wearing polos?
Well, if it's cold, they'll put a sweat jacket or something on, but they're supposed to be wearing a Seven Oaks, shirt. I mean, I know the tattoos things, as long as it's not offensive to somebody, or it could be offensive to somebody, that's unprofessional, but as far as, like you say, piercings go, gauges, things that you see now, I just, you hire somebody and then, and then maybe months later, now they come back in with a piercing or colored hair.
I didn't want to inject. Mike, who's our irrigation technician, has been here 11 years, dreadlocks, tattoos, fantastic employee. I think you guys are entering dangerous waters. just forget about it.
I say wear the polo, wash your hands.
I mean, to me, I mean,
Mike's very professional,
Yeah.
super nice.
So that's what you need though, you need professional. If you have someone with a tattoo that's always trying to show their cleavage inappropriately, you need to.
Yeah, well, to me, you know.
yeah, that's not being professionally dressed. I mean, so, I mean, as far as
Yeah, but
appearance.
dreadlocks are not, or tattoos, I should say,
But
I'm
I'm
talking
just
about more piercings, nose piercings, you know, the gauges in the ears, things like that.
Well, it's not an argument for me.
Yeah.
That's my input that I didn't want to input. But I did.
Right.
I mean, me personally,
Like-
if they can do the job and they dress appropriately
Right.
and they're professional,
Right.
it shouldn't matter what they look like.
So do we need to clarify the dress, if that's our concern?
If that's an issue and you think it's not clear, then I think the dress code itself could be clarified.
Mhm.
If you think the dress code is clear enough to enforce, that it's understood by everyone, and, you know, so I haven't seen their policy.
It sounds like the dress code's okay.
It's a dress, yeah, I'm just talking about the professional appearance type.
So it doesn't, or do you
Doesn't
guys want to
verify.
clarify that any further, or it sounds like those who have spoken are kind of okay with the way it is?
Yes.
I'm okay with
I would say it has to have the landscape for guys' approval.
Alright.
And that's all I have, unless anybody has something for me.
Yeah, Jack, you started talking about the heated pool. I saw the wellheads. Does anybody want to talk about that?
I can give you an update. Wells have been drilled. They're in place. Symbiont is on property as of this week. They're right now forming out the concrete pads. They'll be poured tomorrow. That will hold the heater units. So they are moving forward. They're here now. So they're going to stay here and go all the way to their end point. But right now, that's where they're at. They formed out the concrete pads. They'll pour them tomorrow. They'll start trenching next week. So they all their pipe, so forth, so on, electrical, and they're just moving forward. So there's not a lot of update currently, but that's where they're at.
But the resort pool won't have to wait until this pool's done. The resort pool can be heated.
That is correct, yeah. Everything will be put in place for the Junior Olympic and then tied in when everything else is finished. But the splash park and the resort pool will move forward to their completion. And the splash park
I
also.
didn't know we were doing the splash park. I thought they said they recommended not to.
Well,
Look at that, what a surprise.
I'm sorry, I did have, I have two quick things.
Well, no, I can use splash park.
Now, the kiddie pool though, I don't think.
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, where is not sliding?
No, no,
Not the baby
Not the
wing.
baby.
No.
Not the baby.
I'm sorry, two quick things. Did you want to all approve Mr. Desai's complimentary room rental for that? I mean, he is certified. We would just advertise it for him and he would teach it here
So-
at no cost.
Is there some other, like he does something else with the class that there's no charge for, or are we probably?
He said there was no charges. I asked him, he said there's no charges involved. It's a complimentary and it's just to educate.
Is it a one-time?
It's a couple of days, I think he said, what, 14 hours, 16
Yeah,
hours? So it's a couple
It's
of
a
days.
one-time course.
Yes, one time, yes.
And then I would assume we're gonna need an agreement, so we just have them sign the rental agreement with no charge, like. no
Yeah, we have
charge.
complimentary rental agreement that we do.
It's a
We already
4-week
know.
course, twice a week, 2 hours each time.
Say that, what was it?
4-week course,
4-week course.
twice a week, 2 hours each session.
Thank you.
Is he gonna give us insurance for this?
Well, that's-
If you request it, I don't know if it needs it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I don't know if the rental agreement includes the waiver of liability and insurance provisions, or we need to, typically, when you would allow the use to an organization like this, we would prepare a specific agreement for that. I think he's associated with CARES of Pasco, is that what it is? So we would most likely need the agreement with CARES, and allowing, he would work it out with them to be the lead instructor with another instructor, so that would be my recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we allow it, but he has to have a representative from CARES come back before we get out of attorney involved and start racking up fees. We have to have a representative from CARES that's willing to sign the agreement with us. And then at that point, have our attorney draft the agreement.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, so CARES will provide an agreement. You want to have them provide an initial agreement? and
Yeah,
modify it?
exactly, yeah.
They put forth the legwork, so.
Yep.
Okay, that's a motion by Amy. Right. For a second,
I did.
second by Sean, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. You said there's another thing?
I did say two, didn't I? I lost my train of thought. Oh, no, here it is. So we have vendors, obviously, that we contract with, and they pay us a percentage, you know, to use the amenities to teach their class. I have a resident who's very upset that I'm not allowing her to, well, I can't say she's very upset. She's questioning as to why I cannot allow her personal instructor to come teach her kids on our courts. So basically, I explained to her, because we have one approved vendor, he pays us liability insurance, and he also is our contracted vendor. He also pays the district a percentage, and the courts are not used for teaching other lessons, but recreational play. So she's asking me to ask the board, which I'm gonna ask. I think it's a bad idea if you do that, because there's so many residents that want to bring their own personal instructors for tennis.
I think your answer is perfect. The one you gave her.
Yeah, I say we leave that all set by the board on to make.
So what's the problem? I mean, if we have a process for them to be insured and take on the liability, why do we care if they were rented and use it with us?
Because majority of the instructors like that are outside probably don't have liability insurance.
Well, then they don't get on.
Exactly.
Well, if they're renting it, but
And they're paying, they're making money off our courts, you know, because the residents are paying them, and, you know, to me, you know, Nate, who's our instructor, is paying us. And so other instructors would be teaching lessons, collecting money without giving us insurance and without giving us a percentage.
So why does he not for that?
Because he's our tennis pro that we hired.
Do we put that out to bid every so often? I mean, for me,
Yeah.
I'm not into tennis, I wanna be maybe down the road.
Yeah.
If I'm a resident, I can't use the court with my instructor, like I'm paying him or her separately.
You're not supposed to. Just like a personal trainer can't come in, you know, multiple vendors.
If you bring a friend with you and he gives you some advice, you don't tell him he's your instructor. He's your guest for the day.
Yeah.
That's no
I mean,
question.
she was being honest, and she was telling me, but, you know, basically, if it appears to be a lesson, if it appears to be a lesson by you see personal instruction, it's a lesson. If they bring out their ball hoppers, it's a lesson. So that's kind of what we go by.
So I don't know why we're restricting access to a resident, though. I mean, why does the tennis pro get prime access over me who lives here? That would be my disagreement.
Same way.
I'll answer your question, which I think addresses the point. I think if there's another tennis vendor that wants to come out here and have the same sort of arrangement as on our court, I'm all for having that brought before the board. But on an individual one-on-one basis, where they aren't going to pay us insurance and they aren't going to, remit anything to the district for usage of the court, that's where I draw a line. But if, for example, if that person, he had 10 people and all of a sudden he wants to give lessons, I think it's fair that that sort of situation would be brought to the board to say, hey, you have a tennis guy, here's another one that wants to do the same thing, and then we have that fairness discussion.
Well, I would say maybe they get vendor approval or something, because I don't know why the wrong guy, my daughter uses him, so I like him, he's fine, but I don't know why he gets, our whole community when. I just think if I'm a resident and I want to bring an instructor to the course I pay for yearly, I don't know why you're not letting me, I'm paying the instructor directly, so what's the problem?
Something happens.
So what, do I have liability insurance for something happens if I rent the court?
Correct, but usually when we have the vendor working here, we like to offset our liability onto them because they're the one that potentially causes the harm. So we don't want to say, yeah, we have liability insurance to go out there and whack kids with tennis rackets, as compared to saying, if you're gonna come here and maybe you hit somebody with a tennis ball, we would like your insurance, so that if something goes wrong, we can use their coverage rather than ours.
So I don't know the tennis world, do most tennis instructors have insurance? Do they just find a court that they go rent? I mean, so what happens if I bring an instructor here today and I sprain my ankle, can I sue the district? I mean, I don't think it's any different. Why would I get to sue the district because I have an instructor instead of my wife playing?
Well, let's look at it this way, and not to get too prolonged on this, I think your point's a good one, but if somebody comes here and you bring them on, you came out here and Teresa said, hey, Tom wants to have somebody teach him tennis, and the board says, yeah, sure, go ahead. And then you sprain your ankle, well, the first thing that's gonna happen is any good lawyer is gonna look at these meeting minutes and say, well, we're all before the board, they said it was okay, they didn't get insurance coverage, and now, the board has some culpability there. So I think.
But my question is, does our insurance already cover it anyway? Are we asking for double liability insurance, or is it already covered? And if not, is there a process to get it?
I think you're playing your own risk anyway out there, don't you?
So are we making too big of a deal of this? If the liability insurance is already
If
covered.
I sprained my ankle out there, I wouldn't think it's something to do.
I mean, I have insurance for my house, but if you walk over to my house and drive your car through the front of it, I don't wanna pay for it just because I have insurance on my house.
And then you're gonna have a list of multiple vendors, multiple people that wanna bring in multiple, like swim lessons,
That's
soccer,
that's gonna happen once we're ready. Or once we.
And then you're gonna have, all that as well. You're gonna have so many vendors and so many people, when one's paying and one's not. And it becomes competition and.
So step one, can we look into the fact that we even have liability insurance? Like, I don't know why the instructor would have been the cause of my injury.
Well, that's for lawyers to decide.
So are we covered already or not?
Well, I don't know if the insurance would cover it, if understanding all the facts of the case when the insurance company reviews a claim, they may or may not cover it, depending on if they understand that there's a commercial vendor who's making a profit. They may say, well, this is outside the scope. I don't know that, but that's a possibility, so.
So we look into what the coverage would be.
And that's another reason why sometimes, all of this can be request insurance and to be added as an additional insurer for a vendor's insurance when they're the district's property conducting business.
So can we create a process where the vendor has to be approved and show the insurance that would satisfy us? So then I don't want to take any more liability than we need.
I think we pretty much
The
have
vendor
that.
does that,
Yeah.
So the approved vendor signs an agreement and provides us the liability insurance.
So if they're using a small guy that doesn't have the insurance, they don't get to use it in that capacity. But if they get the approval, I would say we should have a process to say, do you have the insurance? Let's get it on file and give you an approved vendor status.
Just for that resident.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't wanna have multiple instructors, throughout, and then everything's gonna be, lessons in that residential play for the residents, and then,
One of the issues.
and then they're gonna get
right,
upset that everything's, regulated.
Is you have limited access to the amenities you have. If you start doing this and spraying at anybody and anybody,
Yeah.
you're gonna overuse your amenities, and then most residents won't be able to use them, and they'll be less than pleased that it's being used by certain people.
So I get that. What happens, let's play it out for next year, what happens in the pool when there's 20, all of a sudden all this access, because, and I like that, I want more community engagement with the pool. We're gonna heat it, how do we deal with people trying to use that for lessons? Do we?
We had two swim instructors. One did in the morning, one did in the afternoon. And now we only have one because of all the rain in the afternoon, so she no longer does afternoon lessons. So we have one swim instructor who teaches lessons. And now if the board wanted to approve another vendor, then that would be up to the board to approve another vendor for lessons.
And then she gotta go to one of her neighbors that has a glorious pool and say, my instructor, can we come over and instruct my kids in your pool?
And then we've had so many people call over the years that want to do swim team here, swim labs, and that would take up 6, 7 minutes, and the board always disagreed to do that because then, residents wouldn't be able to use it.
Right. So there's a balance of having residents use it, but not book it up for that. I don't know how to balance that. So it's the same thing for the pool, I would think. So maybe we approve more than just one vendor down the road. I know I'm probably making too big
That
a deal.
is totally up to the board. I will do anything anybody tells me, but
I think as it comes up, because it sounds like right now, at least with this particular vendor, it's a one-off, they wanted to do it, they probably don't have the insurance, you can even check to say, hey, if you're interested, I can take it back to the board, if you have the proper insurance, et cetera, et cetera. But outside of that person, it doesn't sound like we have a clamoring of people trying to get in here that we're restricting, at least folks that want to give lessons. So as it comes up, for example, if we get, as Teresa just said, if we get a third swim instructor, she'll bring it back to the board because we'll get to a point where we have to manage
the concerns just mentioned, and I think it would be the same way with the tennis instructors.
Yeah.
You know, even
And
if
we could put parameters around it to where maybe she can only do it once a month, because she's not the
Right.
club.
And we still collect a fee because they're making money off of it.
To Ted's point too, that the concern being overused and overbooked in the facilities to where residents can't do it, I think that the arrangement you have with the one gentleman, the things you can control it. If you open it up to where anybody can have time with their personal coach, whatever, and you have to make that available to everybody, and then you kind of lose control of allocating the time, you know, to where it gets overused and then residents are.
Well, I'm okay with if it gets booked up by residents, but I don't want one coach coming in and bringing in people from Heritage Harbor or.
Oh, yeah,
you know.
sure.
So no for now, I guess. I mean, what if she, I don't know, where do you guys stand on that? I mean, I want to give access to the, we're already over booked, aren't we?
Tennis is, we only have 5 courts and we get booked up. They stay up until midnight to make that reservation. Because you can make reservations up to 3 days in advance. And we have a group of residents that stay up really late just so they can get that reservation in. And they book up, here's another idea. So that they book up in the mornings, on the weekends, fairly fast. Okay, after work during the week, fairly fast. In the afternoons, we have maintenance on it Monday through Friday, they're not as busy. So if the board wanted to consider certain timeframes,
But,
you
I
know.
mean, but we don't even know if this is an issue necessarily, because you could go back to this lady tonight, she said, I'm not gonna pay you a portion of this, and I don't have $1 million in insurance. Likelihood is she might not. So I think where I stand on it is, this one instance that's in front of us right now, just go back and check and say, you know, we talked about it, and if you have the proper insurance, and you're willing to abide by the same agreement the other vendors are, then I'll take your information, go back to the board, we're gonna have to see if it's possible from a management perspective, but, you know, it would come back basically.
Right. And also this lady said he's doing it for free, but he's a coach. So,
Doesn't matter.
like you say,
Yeah.
would they still be able to have to pay a percentage?
Like Jack's
Like,
right.
Yeah.
So could you do a serious inquiry and see if there happens to be a random coach and we don't even know about it, but I hurt myself with my coach, does that cause us any, I don't know why we're.
I'm not sure what to do about it, in that case, we don't know about it, we don't know about it. You know what I mean?
I'm confused why it came up, because you're right, he's a guest.
Would be,
I mean,
he's
if
not
he's not
charging
getting any
anything,
money
yes.
for it, then you book the court, you use it.
well, that's what they say, just so you know. As coaches, you know.
I don't even get to ask.
They're being nice by asking, but what they're really doing is just bringing a coach on anyway, so we can just say, you know, we know about it, but we're not doing it. Or we can, I would prefer to have a process and say, if you're a coach,
I don't know if it's slippery or not, but it's so slow.
I mean, it's not making
I'm gonna point
money.
to Andy's solution then and say that, tell them if you wanna provide insurance, we'll consider it, otherwise it's a need for.
Yeah, at least from the board's approval.
Right, from the.
What happens
official
beyond
approval.
that, but from our official stance
Right.
on it, we need to know those next steps.
No insurance, yeah, the board doesn't. need
And
to
he would
consider
just be able to, so if we had the 1 million, if we had the proper insurance, that coach can only teach that specific lady's child, because we're not gonna contract with another tennis.
I wouldn't even go that far. I would say, see if they have the insurance and if they're interested in paying, and then based on that, they can tell us what they want to do. If they say, I want to train 30 kids here, then again, it still has to come back here and we have to discuss the management end of it. So that's like 2 steps down the road.
Right.
Yeah, realistically.
But how would he be willing to pay if he's not charging that specific resident?
Well, then,
That's
that's his
it.
problem. He's gonna have to
So we
get
can come up with a sort of a policy, a payment plan just for that.
Yeah, I mean, but we're so far away from that right now, it really doesn't even matter.
Right.
All right. Next.
That's it. Thank you.
I wish you would have forgotten that one last.
You're close too.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Vanessa's turn.
If you recall at the last meeting, I had mentioned that we've been contacted by Zayu Group LLC about putting fiber optic cable lines in the right of way on Summergate, Bruce B. Downs. We did contact them to get more information and found out that this is an underground installation, they'd be boring through. And that in order to do this, the district would require an agreement with our commerce identification, insurance, have the district act as an additional insured, and that the Zio group would have to pay for all of the legal fees incurred in reviewing the agreement and the interaction. They agreed to all of that. They sent over an agreement. I did review it. I had a number of revisions just to make sure that it's very clear that any structures that were disrupted were corrected and repaired the way they were prior to, including landscaping and drainage. We got John's input, Tanya looked at it, it was a whole group effort, but any asphalt, signage, paint markings, curbing, sidewalks, all of that.
And there's a 1-year warranty too, in case you get some sightings or something like that.
Well, and they have, they've agreed that it has to be repaired and it has to meet our.
But if something goes wrong 6 months from now, they give a year's warranty on fixing anything that would be, if you get a sinking or something over a trench.
I would think that depending on the type of repair that it was, there would be a warranty based on the contractor's.
Well, I read that they give it, they warranty everything, the whole process up to a year in terms of disturbing our infrastructure. If it's repaired, I mean, you can fill something inside, but if, if it was, a sag or ditch or something, they have to come back up within a year and repair it.
If they do not make the repair within, I believe it's 10 days of the district asking for it, the district then has the right to go in and make the repair and recover the cost directly from that. That's also in the contract. So we have insurance, we have the repair. They do have all the plans. It's I think it's a 26-page total contract that has all the plans and specifications actually attached to it. I have a PDF version.
You all got a copy in front of you.
I saw that came over. Did they say how long the installation would take? I looked through it, I didn't see it. Just a timeline.
Isn't that one of the questions?
You asked, I think they should send a schedule over.
Yeah, I didn't see that 1 year here, but I remember reading it very clearly.
So my question is, what happens if we dig in the wrong spot accidentally 2 years from now?
I believe that based on some of the communication we had, they said that it would be so far down. Does that ring a bell?
24 inches under,
Yeah,
pre-existing utilities, they're under 2 feet underneath, so they don't expect to run into any complications.
Did we also mention a pre-construction meeting and coordinating so that we can make sure that we see what they're doing before we do it?
Coordinating schedule.
Yeah.
Did you guys look at where it is? Is there any problem?
I looked at the plans, yeah, it looks like
Really?
it's going
It's just-
underneath the
Yeah.
trees.
Just the easement area between the sidewalk and curb, running from Brisby down to the same. So it's not a complicated area. I mean, you have, street poles or light poles there, but, they obviously gonna have to do their due diligence, make sure they don't tear up any of that. Right. We have irrigation there, but same thing.
So you're just waiting on, basically send over the schedule?
Yeah, I have not got a schedule.
I don't think so,
Start
I
date
think
or
they may be
completion
waiting
time.
to get through this process. I think,
Right,
yeah.
once they know that this is approved, then they can work on the scheduling. And to Jack's point, the agreement does specify that the intent is for the district to not incur any expense or liability. As a result of the project. It says, including in the event that the repairs fail or the installation causes damage in future to the roads, rights of way, or structures, or any other utilities installed therein. So they're guaranteeing that they will make a repair.
But once they hit the parking lot of Sam's Club, that's private property, then we don't have any issue with that.
So do we need an approval for this, or?
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion.
I second.
By second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Aside from that, I have no other report.
Right. Any questions for Vanessa before we move forward? District engineer update?
I have a few items. The first one, I think there's something included on the agenda in regard to the pond management contract. Taylor and I and John and I talked about a couple things. Number one, neither the current contract nor the new contract include discussions about maintenance of control structures, which we kind of talked about the last meeting. It's gonna take me a little while to be able to create a map with all these structures. I spent most of today looking at aerials, and I spoke with John briefly. There are some structures that are hidden, they are obscure, that he needs to be made aware of, so we will create a map, which is gonna take us some time to pull it together. But in the meantime, we're in the dry season. We should be able to just move through the next 2 months, identify everything. And what we were thinking is maybe go ahead and have the vendor include the maintenance or the initial clearing and ongoing maintenance of 150 structures, control structures. The majority of them look like they are in stormwater ponds. We went to Grassland and looked at the erosion repair, and that structure had not been maintained, and it has a box and a flared in section in the wetland. So in some cases, you have 2 actual structures for 1 flowway. So, and it does consistently look like that they've just not been maintained. So
What type of time frame, Tanya, are you talking about being able to map this out?
probably about 60 days.
Can we do it sooner?
I would love to tell you we could do it sooner, but we are so slammed. I mean, we're already working so many hours a day, and my technician, my assistant, she's got kids, school, she's only able to work, 8 hours a day, so I will do my best to get it sooner. I have looked at the structures themselves. I mean, I've reviewed them, and I can tell you where they are. We can work together to know where they are, to be able to identify the ones that need to be maintained. It's just the physical work of getting each one of those structures on a map is the time-consuming part on the computer. Because we don't have a basis. The original map that was used came from American Consulting, and it didn't even have a maintenance map. It was just an ownership map, so there's no basis of mapping at this point because of that. So and I promise to do it as quickly as we can and make it a priority. We're just, and I think everybody can appreciate this, just overloaded. But I think we can get a game plan in place so that we know what we need to do and, get the contract in order so that you know what the pricing is going to be able to do this. Because all you have to do is go out and look at that one behind Grassland and go, this is what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I saw that one as well. John and I went to look at erosion, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
The majority of them are in that location, so they should be easily seen, and they should know if it's a box, it's got a clear-in section to it. If it's a weir, it doesn't. Some basic concepts. There's probably maybe a couple of dozen that are hidden that have not been maintained.
Do we know the total number and types of structures?
We're gathering that information.
So we don't have a record of that right now.
We do not.
Right. So we've got a 60-day commitment on that.
Like I said, we can still move forward, but to me, you can go ahead and, I'm assuming are you trying to make a decision on Solitude's contract? Because I would.
That's just a renewal.
Oh, okay, so that's not a price,
Yeah,
okay.
we can keep that more. This is just extra for being out on.
Very good,
as soon as
okay.
it's ready.
I just wanted to make sure that they became aware of it, and, it'll take a little while for them. And like I said, if we've got a few months, they don't need to go out there and clean the stuff today. It can be done over the dry season to get everything. And knock on wood, I've not heard anybody complain about any evidence of flooding anywhere, so it appears that there's nothing that's not functioning as designed.
Would it always be Solitude? I know in some communities we have landscapers going out there for.
Either one of them.
And the only reason I mention that is because, and there are some areas where you need Solitude based on always water there. But you'll have some areas that are pretty dry, that it's a weed whacker thing. And it's a lot cheaper to do it with the landscaper. So maybe just because you're gonna see all of these as you kind of go through the discovery, if there's any type of areas that you see that could
easily be done by a landscaper, things that are obvious, maybe just notate that because it could save a bit of money.
Yeah, most likely we're gonna have to wind up paying like an initial clearing work later,
Correct.
and then it'll be like maintenance ongoing in the contract, but with probably an initial fee up front.
Okay.
To your point.
And then I guess we could even consider a third party that's just a site contractor that does that kind of work. If neither one of them really have the equipment experience to do
Yeah,
the initial work.
that's definitely a third option, and we see that.
Okay, I'll work with John. The next item I have is in regard to the speed tables. Forgive me, the delay is completely my fault, and unfortunately, it's my fault because I've just been so slammed, and this is not my area of expertise, so I had to send it to our traffic engineering group to take a look at it. They did email me back, and they were suggesting, they said there is adequate space between the roundabout and Knoll Point, or where the two areas are that already have the crosswalk and the speed table and the S curve.
So in the S curve.
They said, yeah, probably about halfway in that S curve, it would be okay to be able to put an additional speed table there. He was saying that the one closer to the State Road 56, he goes, that is a little bit more problematic because the site visibility is a little tighter there. They had suggested, he goes, one way to narrow the lane is to add an additional thermostripe to the outside of the bike lane delineation. It would effectively remove a foot from the travel lane and add a buffer to the bike lane. And talking about the situation with the bikes a minute ago, 11-foot travel lane and effective 6-foot bike lane. There are plenty of studies showing the slowing of drivers when navigating an 11-foot travel lane as opposed to a 12-foot travel lane. We proposed it in several areas in Sarasota, and one development is moving forward with the design. So if you want to consider another option besides a speed table in the narrowing of the lane and the widening of the bike lane, I can find out if this project is moving forward and find out how it works over a few months if you want to hold off at the entry to the community.
So, you kind of proposed putting it in front of, I guess, Amberside and Springwood?
That's what I'm talking about right now. And that's the one with the site visibility issue. He's saying he thinks that's.
That's quite a bit of space though, from out of the roundabout to those developments.
I can tell you, when you come around that roundabout and you're coming up Ancient Oaks to Springwood and Amberside, you can easily hit 6 miles an hour. Easily.
I didn't know that.
Because I see people doing it all the time. And not only that, coming from going southbound, I mean, from the clubhouse to Springwood, same exact thing.
So from the north roundabout, from the south roundabout to the Amberside Springwood entrance, you're running north and then you start to curve a little.
You got a little curve,
You have the center median. Is the sightline issue on that curve area? Or can we put it in the straightaway? Because if we can put it in the straightaway, it may be premature in a sense, where they come over the speed hump and they're back to speed before they even come to the Amberside Springwood cross.
And I can get clarification because your point may be valid that that's part of the concern is that if people are going 60 and it is not enough distance that there's a safety concern for anybody who might, and finding that right location. But I think his point is you have other options besides the speed table.
I can tell you, if you narrow the lane down, you're still, and again, I'm there all the time, and trying to pull out, like this gentleman said, trying to pull out. Yes, coming around that roundabout, I mean, I'm coming here today, I had to sit there because there were so many cars and they were going 40, 50 miles an hour. For me to even say, okay, is it safe for me to even pull out? Because I got that next car coming around that roundabout at 50 miles an hour.
Right, but is the goal of the vehicle traveling north past the clock tower, traveling north, the goal is to slow them down before the Springwood Amberside entrance?
Correct.
So you have a curve there.
Yep.
So the question would be, can we install, or is that the sightline issue? Can we install the speed table on that curve or not?
I don't think I read on the curb, but you're exiting the curb just before my house, the back of my house.
Yes.
And you're still about 80 to 90 feet from the intersection.
Yep.
But how we have avoided T-bones there, I mean, I saw one that was pretty bad a few years ago.
So let's say we put it in that location, Jack, just before the curve.
Just
Do
after
we feel like that would be enough to slow that traffic down before it reaches that intersection? From an engineering standpoint.
From an engineering standpoint, I can't answer that question,
not
but
from
I
an
would
engineering
say,
standpoint.
I would say if you put it before the curb, I think coming over, now that person has to then now ramp back up, I think that may give you some time to be able to safely either pull out to go northbound or to cross over.
Why wouldn't we just put it at the intersection like we did in Gold Point?
Well, it would be, basically you're at the intersection and you're having to go over it if you're gonna go.
As opposed to a stop sign, if you put it right before, it's like you do it at no point. You basically, it almost becomes a de facto stop sign.
Pulling out of no point now is easy because you almost don't even have to look because people slow down on this table. I still look, but you almost don't have to. If people slow down enough, then you can dart out there if you really want. So I would rather protect the potential people crossing the road right at the intersection and the people actually turning out. They're probably gonna still speed around that corner.
Closer to the intersection would be preferable.
Correct.
Yeah, right?
And I agree with that 100%. If in this world.
You're past the curve at that point, just.
Yeah, right, you're around the curve.
Why don't we schedule a call with him tomorrow?
Good.
You and I, and then that way you can tell him how the community actually functions and he can give us feedback on.
Yeah, I can go out there and send you video so you can see it coming north and southbound.
Well, that's fine, because I think we're all in agreement and it's the preferred location, similar to No Point.
Yeah.
Right near the intersection.
Yeah.
Did you have something, Steve?
Well, I was just thinking, couldn't you, if you're worried about the curb, put up adequate signage? I mean, they've been warned.
Well, signage would be required anyhow.
Yeah,
So.
put up more. And I guess I'd say, I think the 5-foot bike lane will not do anything.
I agree.
All I can tell you, board, is as a licensed professional engineer, we have 1,000,000 rules, regulations, guidelines, standards that we have to follow. We have to follow those standards and we have to make recommendations to you based on what those standards are. I work for a very large company that cannot just haphazardly make decisions about safety issues. We cannot.
Right, so I recommend the meeting with Tanya. Her and I will get everything in writing on email, maps, the whole thing, visuals for her firm. And let her firm just respond formally to where we feel we want them.
Okay.
And then, of course, you guys can ultimately make that decision based on their response.
So where in the S curve could you put it? 'Cause
He suggested about halfway, but he said it was a doable location.
Do you have the pictures? Like, that you can share with people to say where we're talking
I
about?
have the map you sent me.
Well, so my point is, if there's not a median with like trees in the middle, you're gonna get people swerving on either side of it. So we would need to put a median in there.
Well, yeah, we would locate his thought process is you don't have the site visibility problem that you have the entry. So you have flexibility where to put it between two existing locations.
Yeah, but the option, I think, Tom, what you're getting at is that if you separate them,
Yeah.
they're simply gonna go around them.
Yeah.
So they probably would have to be in line. Right, so it's all the way across, in a sense.
Yeah. So,
If people.
In a previous meeting, you guys had said that we couldn't have a big hump that crossed both lanes.
Yeah, I do remember that.
You can't?
We cannot, it has to be separated.
Get it?
So could we add a garden in the middle of the road?
But you know, John, you're right, because I do remember that now, but I don't remember the particulars. But in Tanya's world, they'll have to give us that answer. You know, maybe it's a separation of 3 feet, which is permittable, and they can't swerve around it. I don't know, if it's 27 feet, they can swerve around it. So I don't know, that's
Yeah.
really a Tanya thing.
And that area is really bad.
When you want to get on the call with them, or you actually get on the time?
You
I'm not saying we have to, but obviously there's a lot of passionate people on this.
I'll jump on that call.
Yeah, we'll formulate it, get it all ready.
Send me the contact information, we'll do an invitation. Okay? I just sent you the map so you can just distribute it. And just for the board's information, we hate dealing with these speed limit issues because the land development code dictates to the design engineer what the speed limits are. And unfortunately, it is a very emotional issue. We deal with it in every single community because nobody seems to either want to follow the speed limit or people believe that the posted speed limit is too high. But once again, just so that you understand, it's not a subjective decision. It is a very specific, very technical requirement. So I just want to make sure you realize it's just a matter of following the guidelines when you're signing and sealing these documents.
And it's 50 right there, I'm sure.
All I would look for is that if you put one in before Amberson, you would delay the full throttle for quarter of a mile. Because as they come around that curve, it's like, that's when they start to really accelerate right through the intersection. But they have to delay that until they got almost to the pond after Amberside. And then it would be the next rush up to the clubhouse. You're talking another.
Have there been any accidents?
There's been.
I was gonna say, I think that would be helpful to know too.
I think there have been.
There have been. I remember one was, guy didn't have the lights on, came around T-bone, somebody coming from Springwood in the Amberside drove across.
And it seems like to me, I remember Scott Brisendine back in the day, did somebody hit the wall? Was there a landscape?
No, there was a guy doing about 80 in a Carrera or whatever, the Porsche. He took out those trees on the bed at the end of the
I think
turn.
that's what it was.
He took out, he was drunk as a skunk.
Ooh.
I think it was a
That doesn't
bicycle
help.
accident there 2 years and years ago.
I'm sorry.
Before.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll coordinate a conference call. And now we want to talk about HA5 and the extension of H&S Boulevard, the second segment. I was just telling John, I was just reviewing a pavement management report. We've been able to locate, it's only taken me about 3 years, a company who specializes in doing pavement conditioning assessments. It's a very technical program, very technical standard, and they provide a report that I just sent to John where they actually give you a rating of your road. Okay? And it may be worthy since now we found this company and they do have an office in Tampa and they just did this for Heritage Isles. They just rated their whole community. Have them go out and take a look at the second segment. I don't know. Are you all determined that due to aesthetics or drivability that you think the second segment of H&S Boulevard needs to be done? Are you hardcore to get it done right now?
I would ask you if that should be priority.
Well, and I guess what we can do once we get through this HA5, so if we were talking about holding off doing any bidding or any getting proposals until the spring. So it may be, maybe I can keep my fingers crossed the next time this guy is in town, he lives in Ohio. Maybe I can talk him into taking a quick drive and listen to a few things and see if we can't figure out where to go from there, maybe target a more specific year. The reason I say that is I'm having really bad problems with asphalt manufacturing. It's got a high level of recycled asphalt pavement mixed in with it now. I've got some streets that are less than 5 years old that have already started deteriorating. They're looking at increasing the RAP to 75%. So we're having really, in some cases, really questionable asphalt. Suncoast Paving, who did the first segment, did a beautiful job. That's beautiful pavement. So I think we should consider that just to avoid, and with all the new construction going on right now, they just can't produce it fast enough. So I will talk about that as an option. HA5, we are fixing to start Meadow Point 4. They have warranty work in some new streets in Meadow Point 4. We're doing warranty work in Meadow Point 3. And they're coming here to do warranty work in, what's the notes here? Copperleaf, Villas at Deer Run, and Knoll Point. And then we'll also be doing another warranty assessment at the same time. We are trying to get the work scheduled for the first week of November for Meadow Point 4, and we were trying to get 7 Oaks scheduled for probably like second week of December. We just had a problem with some pavement replacement or pavement repairs, that their schedule got delayed before they can put the HA 5 down. So, we'll keep you informed in terms of final schedule once we know that in the next couple weeks. But, they are coming in to do some warranty work, so, I'll be.
You said first of November and then the second week of December, or did you mean both first week of December?
That, forgive me, I'm combining all three projects. They will start in Meadow Point 4, Meadow Point 3, and then come to Seven Oaks. And we're trying to get the work done the first week of November to the week before Thanksgiving,
Okay.
and then the following week of Thanksgiving to prior to Christmas. We're trying to get the gaps in there. So as soon as we finalize that, once we have the paving company schedule, I'll send it to Taylor so that he can report back to y'all. And then, of course, we will get with John. We had a conference call in terms of coordinating and getting information out to the residents and stuff like that, and notices.
Tony, I just have a question.
Sure.
Not related to what you were just talking about, but I'm looking at the map. And this map isn't reflecting the new information?
No, that's what I used as a basis to show the traffic engineer where you just put the ones that were recently done.
Okay.
So he could compare where we were talking about putting the new ones.
Okay.
So, and I believe that's all I had.
Any follow-up to the grassland situation?
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. I haven't been out there. I will go out there the next week or so, but first comment is contractor has not been paid. The contractor will not even return my phone call. I don't know, do you have an opinion about what it looks like today? I know you've recently looked at
I personally think it looks fine, though we do have that sand runoff issue that we had from the distance of the sod was spread apart. Really, that's it. They haven't seemed to grow anymore, but he has not come back to clean that up.
I will look at it myself because unfortunately now I think he was my vendor to do erosion repair, so I don't even have, now I've got to go talk to other vendors now, trying to find somebody who can now do erosion repair work for me because he's agitated, whatever it may be. But
Was he distraught over this situation?
we didn't speak personally, but he was like, what? When I explained to him what happened, he goes, how many repairs have I done for you? Have there been problems with the work that we've done? And I'm like, absolutely not. And he goes, and what they call swift mud? I go, I can't explain it to you. I can't explain it to you. So I'm sure he's just like all of us, so busy. He's just running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And now he's like, I don't need this work. I don't need to deal with this. If that's what I got to deal with, you know. And then I have to wait to get paid. And I don't know, Vanessa, from a legal perspective, what we should do in order to determine whether he should be paid or not be paid, or because he won't even call me back.
Have you, maybe we can talk about this
Off
phone
the
call
record.
tomorrow,
That's
because
fine.
I need to look at everything.
Well, is there something not been done yet? He finished everything, didn't he?
He's been on site, but John and I have been out there before the grass rooted. There appeared to be, and the way I put it in the email was, it appeared to be gully washouts occurring underneath the sod. That as the water's running off the house, and they did put some sod down, like you could see it was looking for the path of least resistance, that looked like there were potential gully washouts underneath the sod.
It's ducking underneath the sod?
Right, because you could put your foot into little crevices where the sod was. So that's the way I left it with him, and he says, we'll go check it out. Well, I didn't hear from him, John didn't hear from him, I called, I sent emails, I called, and that's where we are. So I believe the company has not been back on site since we emailed them.
Were they to have rolled that just to stationary?
Well, and now, my point is, now the grass is rooted. So we've got good stabilization. I just got to kind of verify that it's not, you don't have any other potential for gully washouts. That's the big thing, because that house, if you'll recall, and this is what caused this problem, is so close to that pond. I mean, that was one of the problems that created this problem, that house design was just.
Is the water cleared up significantly?
You've seen it, I haven't recently.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So Swiftwood, you can't recreate that.
Well, we went went and documented that the control structure was not discharging at the time that the water was turbid.
Okay.
So we do have evidence that there was no discharge during that time.
So, has the homeowner said anything?
Not to me.
Not to me.
I actually went the day after our last meeting and I called him. He said, come anytime in the morning. He wasn't there when I went. So, I looked at it. I'm not an engineer. It looked okay to me. Maybe there's some washout. It didn't look like a major deal though. I mean, he
Was
described
minor.
a big gully and there was not a big gully. It was like a little bit of a hole off.
I completely agree with you. I explained to John, I said, as many times as I've done erosion repair work, and I'm doing it for 15 years, I have never gone to a job site as many times, and was only free to deal with something like this. This just is not.
Well, first of all,
not
this
common.
is our property at that point. What's being done is our property. We condescended to take, listen to him, but he can't tell us how to take care of our property. He doesn't have standing at this point. He may not like what we've done, but he doesn't have any jurisdiction here to.
And I'm glad to know that you visited it, and that I'm.
And I left him a voicemail. Hey, I tried to come. It looked okay to me. If there's something else you need. I didn't see anything obvious, but he never called back. So.
Well, Taylor, I guess, or Vanessa, both of y'all, is it okay if John and I go back out there again? We'll do one final visit, observations, and walk through this, and there's a 1-year warranty, I'm assuming in his contract, I'm assuming that's, I wasn't sure how that was written or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I just would like to get the man paid, particularly since he appears to me to do an equal job to what he's done on all the other projects that we worked on.
Yeah, take a look at it and we'll review the contract. I don't know offhand on the actual term.
Have we specifically held back paying in this final segment because of this issue?
Yeah, I didn't want to make any decisions until we came back and had this conversation.
I'll make a motion that we pay the invoice after Tanya has a chance to review it, if it's to your satisfaction, as well as, our attorney, making sure there's nothing that keeps us from paying it.
Okay.
Yeah, we should let this guy jeopardize your relationship with this vendor too.
And you'll probably want to use him in the future too,
Yeah,
because his pricing is the best.
I thought the work looked good to me.
Oh, yeah.
This guy should be grateful. He's getting 5 to 6 feet more land added to his property de facto, You shouldn't kick a gift horse in the mouth, and that's where I'm at.
That's all I had.
Is that a motion that you did?
That was a
I'll
motion.
second it.
Sorry.
I was waiting a little slower than.
Reiterate the motion, you said? So, pay the property. Okay.
Aye.
There's a motion by Andy, second by Laura, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we'll do my schedule.
Anything for district engineering this time? Moving forward? All right. Then we'll move into district manager update. Next meeting is scheduled for November 10th, 6:30 back here. You'll see under tab 4, there's a new DM report that we incorporated, just to give a quick synopsis of a few things, upcoming dates to remember. Next meeting, the audit completion deadline, the next election, and reminder of registration date for the next election if your seat's up for election at that time. Bonds, you see the eligible for refunding date. So 2016 is going to be eligible in 5 years from now. 21 was obviously just refinanced, so that was not eligible. You've got a financial summary underneath that. Currently trending for last year, and this is through the end of August. So we've got 1 month to finalize this, but trending 662 under budget. So we've got a good surplus there. So just a reformatted summary of dates and finances for you guys. Try to condense it, make it visually appealing. Under that, you have your full financial statement as usual. Look for any questions or comments on the report or the financials.
Are you getting to the CPAP yet?
The what, I'm sorry?
The increase in CPAP?
Where are you looking at? Oh, no, graph? Yeah, not yet. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I think that's each table. Yeah, that's not on the table. That should just be an outstanding, but I'll follow up with that and make sure. Yeah, I'll use that. The only other item I wanted to bring up is the Suncoast fountain contract. So we have a fountain maintenance contract with Suncoast. It's just been outdated, so we need to renew it this time. So I'm just looking for approval from the board to have it renewed. There's no changes in terms or price. It's just to get a renewal for this fiscal year from 10/1 moving forward.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Motion by Andy. Second by Sean, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we'll get that currently updated. We got some solid table as well. I'll wait to get to that. Discussion on S12, S19. Sean, you've been doing some work on that. Can you give me an update?
So, the BCC meeting that was to be held yesterday regarding S19 was postponed due to publication was not completed in time. So it had to be removed from the agenda. However, the current developer is proposing or having to go back to the planning committee to submit new information, which we definitely need to kind of keep our eyes on because they may try to make some modifications. For instance, maybe even looking going horizontal on property versus vertical. So we just need to keep an eye on that. So it's going back to them on 11/9, and then possibly to the VOCC on 1/11/22.
12.
Was it
12.
Was it 12?
Yes, in person.
Yeah, December 9th and then VCC hearing is January 11th.
Correct.
Those are 10 of them.
My dates were a little bit off. Sorry.
I was also hearing that maybe they might try to do a hybrid thing, like put the first floor
Mixed use.
storefront businesses and then apartments above it. It's sort of like, are you a little bit pregnant? I mean, they're trying to shoehorn that residential unit in on the back of a one-story strip mall, you know?
Hopefully they won't do that.
I mean,
Try whatever they can get away with.
Yeah.
That's the definition of a developer.
to me, DeBarlo and Walmart have had basically 15 years plus to find a suitable use for that land, and find a buyer and build something commercial. And to me, they've broken trust with this community to come in and try to force this whole thing with the housing, putting in. As big as they are, as powerful as they are, and as competent, in finding, why couldn't they have found a commercial use for that property in 15 years? When they got solicited by this developer issue, thanks but no thanks. We don't want to put. It makes it look like all they're looking for is a way to make a buck on our back.
Agreed.
We would have said that in the meeting yesterday if it had.
Any further discussion, questions, comments for 12/19?
So to John's point before, is the money earmarked and still available if that proposal was accepted?
It's not budgeted for per se. We've had it in the reserve funds that we've been kind of just keeping in reserves. So yes, in a sense, because we're not budgeting to use the reserve money for anything specifically.
So can I ask a little bit of a specific question on that?
when we were talking about potentially looking at redoing some of the, older playgrounds, would that be coming out of, I mean, if we were talking about using a line item within that maintenance, would that be coming out of the budget for S12, or is that separate?
No, we were looking at using the funds for this year, so we had, but I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah,
but-
6 and some change.
Yeah, we had a lot of money allocated between capital expenditure, the capital outlay projects, money, and contribution to the reserve fund.
Okay.
But the existing reserve fund is what we have funding that is earmarked for that.
Okay,
For us, I'm sorry.
thank you.
So,
I mean, the biggest thing is how many generations of families have to go through here before S12 gets rectified. I mean, is there any way to force something, any way to make it move? I mean, I know Amy was designated the spokesperson to talk to the guy.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, I spoke to them the one time, I think I reported it back 3 months ago. You know, so we had made our offer to them. And basically our offer was based on the original price that was set for just the land portion, not the building. And, you know, they just weren't interested in doing that. At this time, at the current time, I can't speak to whether they were interested in doing it back when this whole thing started, but that's kind of where it stands. So I think, you know, from the perspective of where does it go from here, or how long until it gets resolved, I think realistically, from a district perspective, we could potentially change our offer, which I don't think there was any inclination to do that. But I didn't get the impression, and I know Craig Roger pretty well, but I didn't get any inclination that they were interested in, you know, accepting the price that we offered. And they basically said that, I mean, they responded back.
do you think they'd even be interested in negotiating, or at this point it's?
Yeah, no, it was pretty much
all pretty
off the table, pretty much. So, just to be blunt.
So based on just kind of remembering, so now they're wanting about, what, was it, almost 2 million?
I don't remember
Well,
exactly.
they had a 1.6,
Was it one?
and then now with the price of building going up, they could say it's now worth 2.5 million, you know? That doesn't mean anything to me.
I mean, there was a point whenever it was being discussed, and like it was, they made an offer and we did the offer, and legally we were just gonna say, okay, cool, we're giving you the money, here's the offer, and then it just sort of died. And I know that there was change of administration, and then it was handed off to you. I mean,
And I think that gap time or whatnot, between that gap time is when they decided that no, we're not interested in that anymore. You know, the idea that we may have been interested at one time, but we're not now,
so there really is no S12 item that we should be following going forward, right? There's no offer, there's no.
I think, you know, again, unless there's two things. There's the legal aspects to it that is still going on, right, with the county, that sort of stuff, still.
It's not,
Well, I mean,
It's not
correct, nothing's happening right now, but that's still out there, so at least potentially, maybe there's some point that we need to talk about it, and I'm not sure, but from the idea of strategizing to purchase the property, I think you're right about that, that's probably a dead issue unless there's any inclination to kind of relook at it, but again, I think if I remember correctly, the board as a whole was pretty firm in the number that was offered, based on the fact that at the time, it looked like that was.
I wasn't crazy at 950,000, I'm less than crazy about it to say it's 1.4 million or 1.5 million, you know, they're going the wrong direction.
All right.
I'm not buying into their inflation.
Anything further? John makes a good point, I guess we could just start talking about S19 every month.
And you just a point of history too, John, the fact that we put in a bona fide offer for the land and so, we did that as much as a defensive posture, so they couldn't say the district really didn't have a viable plan here. You know, that we weren't interested in a disinterested party, but it looked like they in the county were making this decision and we didn't have, so we put the offer in to show that, yeah, we were making, we were still interested in this deal. So they couldn't hold that against us, that we were, didn't look like we were interested. We were interested, but we're not knocking on their door every week to see if they're gonna accept it.
Actually, thank you.
Next, I have a discussion on insurance renewal, so it's really just more of an update, but the Aegis proposal, me and Jack were tasked last meeting to kind of finalize numbers of how we want to insure everything across the property. So we recently kind of come to final numbers here, so we got submitted to Aegis and then bring back a formal proposal next month for consideration of additions.
Do we know how much more? We don't have any idea.
Not yet, yeah, I don't know, yet. I'll have to submit our list to them. Basically, we got a list of, here's what we need to add, here's what we think you should insure it for, and we try to trim off the fat off that, so we're not insuring, we're not over-insuring everything, basketball courts that are concrete and ground, what I mean?
Right. That's good.
Stuff that we know is not really a high risk for.
They had some pretty high numbers on the individual items, the monuments and playgrounds and things like that. When you looked at our policy, or this building here was at like $1.6 million with another 400 and some thousand furnishings, came a little over $2 million, and our policy is based on that plus general liability around 20 grand. And then this wish list, and I call it, of all this other property and things that we have, you total them up at 100 here and 60 there and 70 there, it comes up to like $9 million worth of stuff. Well, we're not gonna put policy on another 9 million. Then you have to look at the nature of it. You're talking about monuments, which, well, the only thing that can happen to them is if a tree falls down or they get blown up or something. But they can't flood, they can't be burned. What's the risk? It's not, I haven't seen them put a different risk factor on a monument versus a building like this. They just don't have that risk with it, so, we'll see. They gave us the option, you could put a number on it, try to estimate what the market value or the replacement value would be on something. And then once you've done that, then you can say, well, this year we're only gonna insure 50% of it or 30% of it. And then maybe next year we'll go to 2/3 and get it up to that number. But I'm not in any hurry to get that number. We've gone 20 years without any insurance on any of it. So it's not like it's burning,
And typically we have an insurance partner, they'd be coming out here recommending what we cover and what the risk is and how much more it would be. So that's a lot to me. So if it comes back super high, we either don't insure it or get other quotes, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it's not that expensive when we just insure
But it was good to have the analysis done, and there were some other safety issues that they found there about where, where the playgrounds are near the water's edge, maybe we could put some plantings, keep kids from going over. So it was well worth having it come out, and at least have it down on paper exactly how many pieces of property we have, what the approximate value is, but.
Yeah, so we've only had Aegis for like 1 year to switch over from stall like a year or two ago, so
The other thing,
recently walked.
the other thing that I had, this was my, the thing that I wanted to own in, is that they looked at the stanchions out there and they said, well, this community has 2 wings. Other ones like Stillbrook only have 1 central one. But nobody was talking about the gates per se. The middle section on a gated community, the gates are coming, the brickwork is there, but the actual physical gates back and forth have to be included. You can't have just them out and forget the gates are there. Because we had a situation just 3 months ago where somebody took out one portion of the gate at Lakeside. And that's gonna be, I don't know what the final tab is, it's gonna be close to $4,000 to $5,000 on that. That would be something that we could file a claim on, but the minimum, I think, is what, $2,500 on a claim? It's the minimum is $2,500 deductible, so it's not like you're gonna get it fully paid for. But at least you'd be under our insurance umbrella and we'd be able to make a claim.
All good? All right, any other questions on that before we keep going forward? Next on tab 6, you have the ground associates fee increase. So just to give quick history on this, Grau's the auditor that was selected a couple years ago. Typically, it's in 3-year, 5-year terms. So we have a 3-year contract with them. The price was like $4,200 first year, $4,300, and $4,400 third year. So this is the third year. It was originally set for $4,400. You see the letter before you there under tab 6 that they're basically, asking for an increase of $500. You could say, cancel the contract, you'll notice, and go find another auditor, but it probably costs us $500 to go solicit and, put out the advertisement to do that. It's an increase of $1,100. So we can do it however you guys want. If you guys want to accept the increase, if you guys want to make a counter offer, or you just want to say no and find a new auditor, or just wait till next year and then you say, we didn't appreciate that last year, however you guys want to do it. Next year, you're going to have to re-advertise and new auditor regardless.
So I would make a motion to kind of start discussion. I would motion that we go back to them, ask them to split the difference of the increase, meet us halfway, give us 3 renewable years at that same price. And if they're interested in doing that, we stay with them. If they aren't, then we go out to RFQ.
Okay.
There's
So
several companies that do this, and quite frankly, because there's many companies that do this, and it's a relatively straightforward process. It will, generally speaking, be seamless to us. I have many different auditors we use in different districts, and have not run into any problems really. At least with the ones that are going to apply.
Usually with these agreements for the auditors, they provide a 3-year agreement with an incremental price increase, and then there's an option for the next 2 or 3 years written into the contract.
Mhm.
So that is a good point, because if you didn't go out to RFP for a new auditor, what would their increase be as those alternative renewal years as well? So if you do agree to this, you would want to know what.
I would ask them to keep it flat. I mean, that would be.
Can we agree to more years without advertising them?
Well, because the agreement does have the potential for an additional, usually 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking as a standard, 1 year come back, but at the same rate.
Right, there's 3 years, and then there's usually, and I haven't seen it, but there's usually an option for an additional
I see what you're saying.
couple of
Well-
years written into those standard contracts. So
With an increase.
they do usually have an increase, but that would be something you would want to know now. But if it doesn't have that additional 2 or 3 years on top of the 3, then you would probably have to go out anyway.
So you want to make a contingent motion on the contract allowing for that?
Yeah, just leaving the flexibility as described. I would amend my motion.
Okay, so.
See how I did that? So we'll split the difference. Yeah, go back to 950. Split the difference. We would like it flat for 3 years, if able to do that under the current existing contract and an extension of it. If we can't, then they just need to provide us with what the increase would be over the next 2 years. 2 years.
If the agreement provides the
Depends on
potential
what it
for the additional renewal. If it doesn't, then you have to go out.
Yeah. So, and I would make that, at the tail end of that motion, yes, if none of that can be done, go out to RFQ.
Right, but still counter with the 4950.
You're correct, yeah.
Okay, so if we can't do the additional years, we can only negotiate this last year of the contract, and they decline 4950, we go out to bid.
That's my motion. I mean, just my own personal opinion.
Just so I get this motion.
Yeah, but no, you got it. You got it right.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or motion or proposal to approve that?
So when is this due? Is there a due date for this? And it's September.
Yeah, we do need to get this, this needs to be like handled at this meeting now. So that's why I wanted this contingency plan, kind of if they don't say it, then we have a plan already authorized, because we do have a guideline, a deadline that the audits have to be done by.
When is that?
It's like June, well, yeah, we have to get them hired on and get them all the stuff, and then I think they finalize the audits are done, I think June 30th, but we gotta be way ahead of that.
Yeah, I know, but we have like until next month.
Oh, next month?
Yeah, and I would say by like November, we need to have, we need to have like a contract ready to go, because we have to start submitting everything to them. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next order of business here, discussion on fence encroachments. So the two encroachments at 2352 and 2400 Spring Hollow, we discussed last month, giving the same guideline that they had to move their fences in 5 feet on either side to allow 10-foot easement, which has been kind of the standard we put in forth, previously. They had asked this particular area, there's also an access gate through the apartment complex on the other side of the pond. So they basically came back and said, can we try to work something out to, avoid everybody tearing the fence down? John went out and looked at it. That's apparently the way they've been doing it for all these years up to now. So there's definitely validity in the request because they've been doing, these fences have been up for like a decade. Ultimately, I think there were some concerns as far as whether or not, you think we can, we would have to have access, I guess, to the entire property basically to utilize that for landscape work and aquatic maintenance access and through the fence. And I don't know if you want to give me more information, but it's a lot.
If the district were to alternatively use the access gate that is on the apartment complex to the side, then we would need to have permission to access, because it's all private property, to access their property entirely and use that gate.
Which
We couldn't just go in and start using it.
So we kind of want to do our due diligence and look at it as an option, as just as a courtesy to residents. You know what I mean? But it sounds like it's be a lot to do, and I don't know whether or not the apartment complex would grant us that access with no real benefits
They've
themselves.
granted it to us for the past, 15 years.
What?
They've been using it, right?
Yeah, they've been using it,
That
but
doesn't mean
as
they
far
grant
as
it to us.
a legal agreement where they're taking on some liability, I would assume there's some liability involved.
Or they're,
Unless we grant it otherwise.
or we're assuming the liability if we hit their fence or something like that. That's what we would be.
Well, don't forget, this came up because our pond contractor, the gentleman that was our on-site technician for many years left. They put a new technician in place. The new technician couldn't figure out how to get to this pond. He knew nothing about the access through the apartment complex.
Well, he looked for the appropriate access.
Yeah. So, and then on top of that, we had a homeowner complain about the condition of the pond behind her home. So it all kind of surfaced at that point. Was the former technician using that gate in the past? I don't know if I don't know. But that's how this all came to light, because the new technician, again, going to do that pond, can't get to it. I didn't know how to get to it, so it came up that the fences are blocking the easement.
So we should probably do it the right way. Is there any other access besides the apartment? Because I
No.
can't imagine parking is going to be
The only two access points are the easement that we have, and it's the only one on the map that Tommy's company provided to us to get to the two ponds that are behind those homes, or through the apartment complex. It's the only two ways.
I think we have to do it. I agree. I think we have to do it the right way. I think we're lucky that, us not knowing that they were using that apartment entrance is good that nothing ever happened.
Were the fences approved through the right channels by the CDD when they were installed?
Well, we don't approve that. It's the responsibility of the homeowner to know, where on the plat various easements are that they can't cross. So we don't do a review of that. That's their responsibility.
So I would recommend we do a similar process the last time. She gave us a second to go work with both homeowners and with the company trying to get back there, how much access do they really need? so we can do less.
I can tell you, at our last SOPA meeting, there were some members, including the president, that didn't like that compromise, that we would only ask for like 10 feet. They say the county, it's a county thing, and I don't know that, they said they don't think the CDD has the authority to redefine what the county easement is. If they got it at 20 feet, then we shouldn't be reducing it to 10 feet. And they're ready to tell the guy to move the fence all the way back to like 3 feet from his house instead of giving him that extra.
Well, that's our property. Though.
Yeah, I mean, if that was, we can give them a variance.
There's crazy people on the sofa.
I think the agreement still, like, if I'm correct, I think it still kind of defers and like the county has ownership rights as well as the rights. It's just as far as what
We're not changing what the county has,
right.
the district has an access easement.
So if the county comes in, which is unlikely, and says we need those other 2 feet, you know, ultimately, I think they can still do that.
They could, and, our agreement basically says that if that easement is needed for access, then there's a right to remove.
Right. So I would say
So
we
we're
could
not
just
giving
say
up the county's rights necessarily, we're just saying that 10 feet's okay with us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think we said that in the last meeting to the gentleman that was here, is, hey, if there needs to be additional, space, you may come home one day and your fence is down.
So how is the homeowner with this property, with the homeowners? Are you comfortable talking with them, or is it?
I have never spoke to them.
I've talked to them.
Yeah, I think Taylor's already been involved.
Are they reasonable?
They're reasonable. I mean, it's just, and again, I didn't want to have, I wanted to give the board an opportunity to review it again as a courtesy to them that, you guys are sympathetic with the inconvenience, obviously, but ultimately, like you guys said, it's kind of the correct way,
right?
Using our property.
Yeah. So I guess my question is this a situation where it's, 20 feet and we need 10 of that, and or is that the same situation?
Pretty much, yeah. I don't remember if it's 20 or 12 or whatever it is, but essentially we're applying the same rubric that we used on the last situation where we said we need 10, just take off 5, you keep whatever's left, kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of a compromise that, we're not putting the fence on the side of your house, all the way up to the wall, but we have enough room to do what we need to do.
So who delivered that letter to the homeowner last time?
I did.
So would you be comfortable with that? And
Yeah.
Allowing John to try to work with the homeowners on and the maintenance team to see how much space they really need?
10 feet.
10 feet.
Yeah, that's
we did it last time.
Yeah, that was determined on
He would
the
move
first
his thing
fence
back
project
5
that we.
You want to verify that's still okay here?
I can.
I might be a tree in the way at the end or something.
Yeah, no, I'll re-verify that.
Okay.
But that's.
Well, the other sticky wicket is, I said in this meeting that I thought the SOCO was gonna pay for it, and that had not been approved in the previous meeting. So there are some people that said we should own it up, go ahead and honor that, but what is the amount gonna be, $1,500 or something? I move it back.
I think that was the other fence approachment, it's not this one.
Yeah, it's not this one.
That was a separate issue, so.
I would say if we can follow the same process that we did with the other, where
Right.
Vanessa will accept the agreement, keep up the consistency, you send the letter, I think we're good to go.
I think we've already got the agreement, I think that's already been, I'll double check.
Okay.
Essentially, we're trying to keep it consistent.
Correct.
Same thing, I just want to review it since it's had the unique situation of, second access, if you will.
So is there some form of official communication to SOPA from our board that says, hey, we run into this situation again, just to let you know? I mean, I think we should communicate with them.
I can communicate that to Amy.
Okay, that makes sense.
What's the outcome if a person doesn't move the fence?
We take it down.
And then go and throw it.
Literally, so you'll come in there with a backhoe, pick it up, move it off, put it on the side of the house.
I'll put it with new Ranger. All right. Can I get a motion on that, just to have it on the record?
A motion.
A motion by Sean.
I'll second.
Second by Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tab 7, we have the Solitude service contract. The last contract that was on file was under their previous name, what was it?
Lake Master.
Thank you, Lake Master. So it's renewal time. I asked if they put a formal renewal instead of the automatic renewal. It's automatic, but since the name change, everything is re-updated. It's like 10 years old now. So I asked them to put together a new proposal, so we have something current. So the price is the same, so just looking for a motion to approve renewal.
I'll motion to approve that with review by district council.
I second. Second by Sean, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Tab 8 we've already gone through, that was our RFP process. Tab 9, consideration of disability benefits for CDD employees. So we have a proposal for all employees, that's a revision on pricing that's provided. It's not a full proposal, but for if we want to consider just the managers, it should be John, Teresa, Christina. Jack had mentioned earlier an idea of maybe some alternative methods to any kind of compensation for disability versus doing it through insurance.
Well, so can you help me? I was looking at this briefly. What is the cost annually to cover the managers?
Let's see, I've got it on a monthly basis here. So if we just did the managers for short-term and long-term, you're looking at about 4,200 ballpark per year.
Yeah, so where are we going with just getting a quote from this company?
Let me just caught a little context here. We brought this up when she was having her surgery and would be out for a couple of weeks, but now it's a situation where she's gonna have to go back in for a longer period potentially. Whatever you do with this policy, unfortunately, none of it would be applicable to your situation or to anybody's situation. They have a waiting period of up to 2 years on pre-existing condition. So they look back and say, well, this is related to an earlier condition, therefore they wouldn't be paying out anything. So unfortunately, would be no payout on this. I wonder, because of the amount of money that you're paying out every year for this, instead of looking at it as a short term versus a long term, if we had some type of a health maintenance fund that would be developed, that could be tapped by an individual who experienced a situation like you have, and it could be paid out of that. Sort of like as a family, you form a medical fund, you fund it, but you draw it out. It would be the district would fund it, and it could be utilized as opposed to getting yourself in a lockdown so much a year premiums where you're paying, you're paying that out all the time. You may not ever use it. Then maybe we build our own kitting as an alternative.
Yeah, I volunteer to look for alternatives.
Do what?
I can volunteer to look for alternatives. I sell disability insurance. I don't normally, but I know companies that would do that, so I can try to see if there's health savings accounts or flex spending accounts or a group plan that you can put together that might be more flexible.
I think that's also better, yeah. I mean, to answer your question, why there's only one, this was something that was kind of brought up on the side, so it wasn't something that necessarily had a lot of direction to really dive into motivation wise. It was something that Teresa had brought up and me and Jack had talked about. And it was actually a lot of work to actually get it put together. We had to submit all kinds of information, their salaries, all their employees. It was a lot. So,
Do you
we
still
can
have
definitely
it?
get more. Yeah, I have it. But maybe we get a direction as far as whether we want to pursue it for all employees or just 3 management staff and go from there. And I think alternative option, like you mentioned, I guess flex spending or something along those lines might make more sense.
Yeah, I would motion that we pursue that for the 3 management staff, which is pretty typical in districts that do provide these sorts of things.
Okay, Tom, is that something that you want to?
Yeah, I do that. I don't know how long it would take. Usually it would take like a week or something to try to look at whatever options we have.
Okay.
So I don't know if we can help do anything.
At first blush, and I'm not very well versed in these things, it just looked like for the amount of premium you pay and what they outline as the coverage exposure, it seems like you're paying a lot of money. You know, you're paying out $2, maybe say, and then you're only gonna get $1 worth of benefits out of it or something, I don't know.
Yeah, we should be able to have a self-funded option, but there's probably things like that built already, so.
Well, self-funding wouldn't work for long-term disability. If somebody went out, that fund would get exhausted pretty quick.
Well, but that's how you fund the whole picture. So if you do something short-term, that maybe we manage more closely, but then a cheaper long-term option that doesn't kick in until X, Y, Z, that makes that less expensive, so.
Yeah, well, you're aware of that, so I leave that to you and David, and work something out to that. I'm beyond my expertise on that.
So you're thinking of something through an insurance company still?
Like a group benefit company, which would be an insurance company.
Okay.
Wouldn't be from my company, but I know the people that would know, so.
Okay, you and I can talk about it more than.
Sure, yeah, if you can find a secure way to share some of that info, then I could get some quotes or just some ideas.
Sure. Okay.
Did you look at the specifics of this contract?
Just briefly, I mean, and it, like
I
you
mean,
said.
what was it pro forma, or was it high, low, or?
Well, I know the situation, so I know we're not gonna get any coverage for what we're trying to do immediately. So
Yeah.
initially, I don't like it, but the smartest people in the room are underwriters. They're very smart people. They always make money. It's like going to play poker, at the casino. You're never gonna. So
the house.
So, but how do we get some coverage? Because I think that's what we want long term.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying why just one company. So I would like to see what other options, because there's some creative things with insurance that they've changed over the last.
I mean, this is not like our other insurance where we're in a niche market and only so many people. There's thousands of people that offer this kind of
Yeah.
coverage.
Yeah.
So you should be able to work it pretty.
Yeah, and sometimes there's what's called PPO. No, it's like a group plan. It's built for, let's say there's an industry that nobody has a plan, they build one big plan.
Like a
An affiliated plan.
corporation organization.
It's like that, I can't remember the name of it right now. But sometimes you just tap into a bigger plan that's already built, so it's cheaper because you're funding it lots more people than are able to see.
And can I just ask, I mean, I know it's, I just want to ask, but since, you know, my situation is a little different, I mean, I wasn't expecting this. But if the board would consider possibly paying me for my next leave, and I'd be at work.
How long do you, I mean,
Well, the doctor said 4 to 6 weeks, but he also said 4 to 6 weeks with this.
Yeah.
But this is a second surgery, so, and I might be a little bit longer. I mean, I came back because I felt good. I mean, I felt like I could work, I just had to do things. But I'm gonna come back as soon as I feel good. I don't wanna be laid up in bed. It's
so
not my intentions.
just a thought here, I'm happy to approve an excess personally, but, could we prepay future work? Would that help? Would that make it easier? I don't know. I'm pretty sure you're gonna be busy once we keep the pools in all over it. So I'm just saying, can we pay? I don't know if there's a way to do that with our system or not, but I don't know what exactly you're asking. I don't know the dollar amount for 4 to 6 weeks,
Right.
so maybe we need to understand that.
Would you consider that she's working out of home, giving direction and taking questions and things like that, even if she's not physically here, sort of on a reduced status, but continue to be paid?
Might be an easier alternative. That might be an easier alternative than the advanced.
That or, I mean, if you did have short-term disability, it would be what, 60% in most cases? Could look at something like that.
So I don't know if we should say this publicly or if we, whatever. How much would that be per month?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, I would.
So how do we discuss this? So,
Well, I would be comfortable at 60% knowing Teresa is hard pressed to stay off the computer and rest. And since we don't have that short-term disability, I don't know.
I want a doctor to refresh the studies to be out. I mean, 8 weeks goes by, 12.
Well, you can say, you know, a certain amount.
Well, that's a good point, Tom, because, 6 weeks might turn into 5 months, you don't know. complication could change things, and then do you just continue that out? I don't know. Lauren makes a good point, because it is typically 60, and I think it's a good point that specific numbers are discussed, but that's just the percentage, 60 of whatever it is, you know, whatever currently is. Or
And I think 46 is short term.
Yes. Sounds like a motion.
So I'll motion that we pay 60% of her salary for the time she's gone.
Oh, you gotta put it. For 6 weeks?
To be
Well, I
reviewed-
mean, if
to
you
be
come back
reviewed-
before, well, how do we stop that?
To be reviewed and discussed monthly, because the need here circumstance might change, so.
Okay.
Is that agreeable?
60% of salary.
There should be some time frame defined.
That's what I said, is it to be discussed monthly, because it might change.
Are you saying 4 weeks?
Maybe like 45 days, and then that way it's not expired, we have another meeting prior to expiration that you can review if necessary.
Okay.
All right, it's a motion by Tom, and a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
So just an outside, so is Tom gonna continue to look for a policy, or is this now the policy?
No, so that's a good question, because if something were to happen to you on your new vehicle. I think we have to have some more HR discussions on what's going on.
What laser are you gonna use? John, when you have your history,
It's only for.
Well, it just kind of sounds like you have created your own disability group.
Good point.
So why hunt for disability insurance?
Well, that would be a short-term thing, but to your point,
For a long
God
time.
forbid, if something
It's
happens
good
on
to know.
their options, you might want to pay a little bit of money to get
Yeah,
longer term.
true, okay.
So I'll still look, if it's not a good option, we'll move back.
Tab 10, minutes of the supervisors meeting held on September 8th.
I motion.
Motion by Tom,
That's second.
second by Sean, all in favor?
Second.
Any opposed? Motion. Tab 11, O&M expenditures for August 2021. Look for a motion. No questions?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Andy, second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Tab 12 is general fund for August 2021. So $318,996.49.
Motion approved.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
and by Sean, all in favor? Any opposed?
So, quick question on this. If I wanted to spend some time with somebody and go through it with a fine tooth comb, who would do that?
I should be able to do that unless you wanted to dive in with something particular, like John or Teresa's budget.
I can't keep claiming I'm new to the board for too long, so I need to understand all these things. So if we just keep saying off on it, I don't have to do my due diligence. So I'd like to just see if we can cut a couple of things here that I think will help the long term. I don't want to bother a bunch of people and change everything. I just think
Right.
I would like to look at that if we could. So is that you or is that up them?
I would like to look at it,
Either one.
discuss it on my budget too.
Yeah,
It's easier to come to the clubhouse and look at with them, or if I'm happy to come down and look over as well.
Okay. So maybe I'll start with them and then I'll.
Or, I mean, you have this email to you as well, you can review it, and if you have, make a list of questions or items that you want to discuss, we can do a conference call or meet or whatever you want to do.
Thanks.
Definitely open to.
Like I said, I don't want to ruffle feathers, but if there's something we just haven't looked at, sure, maybe I'll say something.
And well, I would say look through it yourself, and then whatever questions you have, make a note, because it might be something better answered by John. If it's about mulching, or whatever, it might be more relevant to one of us than the other, so. Motion carries. Supervisor requests. Start at one side and work our way down, I guess. Sound good? Andy? John?
So I'm going to use that new card. So I do have some questions regarding performance evaluations and things of that sort for our management staff. Is there anything like that that's in place today? And if so, who does that?
Up until this point, it's just been done by the district manager. I think it's been that way because any board discussion would be pretty much open. I guess we could change it to where I could send something out to the board, I would think, and they could provide feedback to me to put into the review. Would be the only way to, I guess, do it without it being an open forum discussion of how's John doing, how's Teresa doing.
All of those communications would also be a public record though, so.
So with that caveat, I guess.
So I don't know what exactly you're looking for. I mean, so I think he can do a direct job for the official review. I personally am trying to just work with both of them mid-month to say like what else can we do or.
Well, I think so, if you look at corporate environment, right? So, normally every year there is a evaluation of your staff. Are they developing, are they performing, are they excelling?
Right.
I just want to know, is there something like that's in place today?
There is, so yes, and it would basically be done by myself.
Okay.
So, yes.
And then once that evaluation is done, is that information shared back to the board?
I don't know what's been done in previous years. I don't think I've done one for them yet.
Thankfully, they're not that
I haven't
bad.
gotten that far through. So
They're not that bad.
I would say that's something that we could change and adjust for this coming review performance period, if the board wanted to make it where, I'm doing it, you guys are sending feedback throughout the year, and that's being incorporated, or the review is shared with the board after it's been generated. Again, it'd be public record at that point, I
I
guess.
think that's a good point, because the last 3 years, we've had a turnover of district managers. And so none of you from Rosetta had a chance to really work with these people for a whole year.
Mhm.
So it's not kind of fair, I think, to have put that out and kind of evaluate your years when you only been here 6 months or something. I know there was a time, I think it was when Bob was here, he felt a little, I don't want to say threatened, but was not anticipating his evaluation was going to be as good as he wanted it, and wanted to have somebody from the board to either sit in or oversee it or something. You remember that?
I do.
Okay. So I think it might be warranted at this point to have some, if not me, one of the other board members.
I think that's a good idea.
So to follow through, if not you, one of the other board members, what exactly?
So what I think what Jack is saying is, so if Taylor's doing an evaluation for John, so have one of us present as well, based on the evaluation given.
Wise, are you in other districts, do you do the review, or is it a board member?
In other districts, the CDD doesn't have staff directly most of the time. Most of the time, it's like an amenity management contract for another company.
I was thinking
So,
of the other way, making them, what else can you do? Let them manage.
yeah, so it's definitely unique in this district. I don't know if Andy has any experience.
Yeah, I mean, so our company standpoint, generally speaking, if we have a district and the employees are district employees, then I don't do a review because they aren't, although I might advise them and direct them, they technically aren't my employees.
Right.
So I can't really do an HR style review. So in those cases, a lot of times, a board member might do it, or, to be quite frank with you, in a lot of cases, we will have somebody in either John or Teresa's position will review their employees, and then from the perspective of their increases, bonuses, those sort of things, the board generally discusses and makes a decision, rather than a formal review, because they're interacting with 5 different people potentially, as well as your staff members. So that's typically how it's done. Formal reviews, I think I have one district that's done for, at least for their level of employment.
For district management staff.
That's not to say that that's right or wrong, it's just happens to be the way it is.
True. So then I guess, to Sean's point, do we want to modify that process to either be by or to involve a or all board members.
Would you feel comfortable having one of us sit in on your review?
I don't problem.
Sit in or conduct it?
I mean, but either way, I mean, conduct it, I mean, do it or sit in, I think, I just think it's something that we probably should look at adopting, just from a employee standpoint. So I'm saying.
Procedural.
Yeah.
Well, just to interject, I don't have an issue, if any of you sit in, if Taylor does it, if Vanessa does it, makes no difference to me. But to go back on Jack's point of talking about Bob in the past, that was a little bit of a spur in Bob's side, that nothing against the district manager by any means, but the district manager was new to the property and didn't have a lot of interaction time with Bob, and he felt a little put off that she was reviewing his performance. You know, so, and I kind of get that, I guess, where the board has a lot more interaction with us, you know, than maybe the new district manager. We've had quite a bit of interaction actually since Taylor's been here, so Taylor may be perfectly fine at it. I don't know. But from my seat, for what it's worth, I don't care. I don't care if all of you in there. So,
I think that it would be good to have board input on it. Because if you
When
were
are they
to
scheduled, when are they to be done? You know?
So normally, typically, you have an evaluation or a performance evaluation normally around the February timeframe for the previous year. That way you can kind of capture from January to January to December. January, you gather all your information, and then you do that evaluation.
Yeah, a calendar year basis. I would say that's probably good, or, I mean, I can look at when the last one was done, I don't know off the top of my head.
yeah,
We've always done ours on our anniversary.
I think it's
that we
before
were
budget.
hired.
right, or in this world where our budget is October 1.
Right.
Because Taylor and I have
That's
actually
when you
discussed
raise
this.
it.
Right, should there be any, financial adjustments or reprimands or whatever it might be, your new budget, it really should more focus around the budget year.
So
The budget date.
fiscal to fiscal.
Fiscal.
But your timeline works because that would give a chance for the review to be done, and then the first cut of the budget that's usually April or May, you have your numbers already. So actually, I think your timeline works really well.
Yeah, for the upcoming budget
Yeah.
discussions, yeah, correct.
Yeah, so you want to do calendar year review, January to January to be presented in February, to start budgets in April. Approximately.
Yeah, and it's probably good. On most HR reviews, you get feedback from one of you guys, and then feedback from us, and then you compile it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was leaning towards too, is getting input from you guys as well. Vanessa brings up a good point that if it's for emailing, that's gonna be public record, subjective, but I guess we don't have to email it. Call it.
Loophole.
But I also think, it's fair to the employees to know where the feedback is coming from as well as part of
The evaluation.
Yeah.
open in the sunshine, the evaluation, so, it is what it is. I think everyone who works for the district understands the nature of the public nature of it, so. But having that feedback is probably valuable for him to have and compile.
Absolutely.
However you want to do it though, it's fine, but whatever the ultimate result is, it's still public.
So, yeah, I would also say, as much as it's great to have a process, it's kind of like New Year's resolution in my mind. Like, you shouldn't just do it once a year. You should probably just talk to most of the people. So don't wait for that time.
Yeah, I mean, so typically, kind of corporate environment, it's only, you got a mid-year and a final year. That's typically how it is.
Okay.
Now, let me ask, with the increases, if there's any increases that were approved, would that begin your anniversary date or the fiscal year? Because all my pay raises or whatever I gotten was on my anniversary date from when I was hired.
When you
So
say
if I was
anniversary
hired in
date?
October, that's when my pay raise, if granted,
Now.
would begin.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it should be October, just because that lines up, so, you know, we make sure rounding is available. I get what you're saying, but technically it should be fiscal year.
Okay. All right, so that was a lot. I'm gonna reiterate, touch points I have here. So,
Well, John, or you might not, John doesn't mind.
Well, historically, the maintenance department, and this way it always has been under Bob's tenure, is that it was your anniversary date. So you had 5 different anniversary dates. Taylor actually suggested scrap all that and make sure it's October 1, beginning of the season. And I'm fully in agreement with that we just readjusted it.
In one year.
And everything happens in one shot.
One
New
time
budget's
there
there.
that lined up.
Right,
Start
and you know what the budget is because you've already, discussed it, like Andy just talked about.
And it cuts out room for error.
That's
That
correct.
bunch of employees with different dates.
Yeah, it's much simpler.
Yeah, it's so much simpler.
So I think that the fiscal date is definitely the way to go.
Would that, I don't know where you are in your raises or whatever, would that screw one of you guys by a year? Like, would you miss it by a year?
No, I've actually already discussed it, for instance, with my team, because, typically my team is January, March is their fiscal year, or their anniversaries.
Yeah.
So they've recently, because the board granted a 3% last year, they got their 3% like February, Marchish. So they're expecting October, they're gonna get another one. But it's gonna be a whole another year till,
Well, the board didn't grant
Should-
pay raises last year. That was never approved.
yeah, but I'm just making,
Yeah.
that they may get another one this October. But they're gonna wait a whole another year till the next October. They're not gonna, they're kind of gonna get too early. And then wait all the way, then it'll recycle every October 1.
Yeah, at some point you gotta do it.
all right, so we'll be doing performance evaluations for all the CDD staff based on the calendar year, January to January, presenting the reviews in February, and raises would take place with the fiscal year on October 1st. And moving forward, I'll solicit some kind of feedback from you guys.
Why are we moving it to January?
That's just the evaluation period.
That's the period, the calendar year. So we're evaluating from January to January, presenting a review in February,
And then we'll be
considering-
able to determine our budget in April.
Okay, I see, okay, because we're already set for this next year.
Yes.
Okay.
So even for our staff that we'll issue performance evaluations for our staff as well at the same time frame.
So come January, so come 2.5 months, we'll start writing all the reviews. You'll do your staff,
And John,
and the board will contribute to the rest of the years.
So, we want to look at some generic, I don't know, if you guys need help putting paperwork to say, like, here's what we're reviewing.
Well, we have a format already.
Yeah, we have review forms already in place, so that's not a problem.
And then I have one other question. As far as looking at, same instance, performance of, district engineer, how do we evaluate that? Is that done through us, through Tanya? How does that happen today?
There is really no process for, district engineer, district council, or myself. What I would say, what I guess would make the most sense, in my opinion, would be an annual review of the contract renewal term for those contracts.
Okay. Do we know what that is for engineering?
I can pull them all up. Let me see.
We typically, for professional services, are usually evergreen. So, you always have, they have a clause to get out, we have a clause to get out, that sort of thing. So you could, most likely, if you wanted to, you could set an arbitrary, we're gonna look at it every year. You could say January, something like that. But the good thing about, obviously, our professional staff, they're here every meeting, so we can always just give that feedback directly or let them know if we think they're doing a great job.
Okay.
Taylor, I think you're doing a fabulous job.
All right, that was all my questions.
Okay. I can follow up with you when I
That's fine.
specific dates, so. I'd like to get a motion on the performance evaluation change of procedure then, that we just discussed.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Sean and Andy, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any further supervisor requests? Okay.
Not good, that fast enough.
I do.
I know we kind of talked about putting things on hold while we kind of sort out the pool. I do not want to lose sight of those aging playground systems, so as soon as, I guess, everyone's kind of feeling comfortable, we can start working our way through that. In terms of the time frame, are we looking maybe January? Because then we'll have the start of that, maybe we'll know if there's any huge
Issues? Yeah,
We didn't find a lot of huge issues
Well,
when we went out on the insurance inspection.
well, no, not as far as that, Jack. She's saying as far as, like, for instance, with the pool.
when they start doing.
Right now, we don't know, once they start digging everything out, if there's gonna be some additional costs that we may need to incur. So I would say, once we have that determination, I think we should start having that discussion.
Well, but in addition, just, obviously, Taylor, tell me if I'm wrong, but from a playground perspective, we should have funds in reserve allocated separately for that sort of project. So I would say, just from a project planning perspective, because I agree with you 100%. If not looking to directly do expenditures, we should start doing the planning. I mean, that should be on our next agenda, in my opinion.
Planning for the playground specifically.
Yeah, just
reserve stuff.
to start getting the ideas together. I mean, you can, at the next meeting, you can give us an idea of, do we have funds in reserves, how much? Obviously, I'm sure John has great detail about deficiencies at playgrounds, whatever they may be, and we can start.
And we do have it on reserve.
Yeah, we've discussed that.
Yeah,
The money
yeah.
is there.
So, I mean, just kind of to get the ball rolling, kind of just kick it off as a discussion item.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there any that you specifically think need to be addressed, or just all of them?
I was gonna look at the ones from like the earlier phase.
I would say from south to north, it's probably
Because
better.
I know me and Jack have looked at probably close to all of them, almost with the insurance company, or at least a lot of them, I'd say at least 10 of them.
Yeah, we went in every park and looked at it. It was, they didn't find a lot of stuff.
Yeah, other than there's no hot touch stickers. That was pretty much the only issues that they found from a structural safety standpoint. So.
But they are aged.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, I don't think a lot of them are exactly the
exactly
same almost, it seems like. But
Yeah, they are aged.
Well,
there's like two different styles, they're literally all like two designs, and they're almost all identical.
Back to Lauren's point, because we had this discussion a few meetings back, the discussion was to start at the oldest section of the community, which is the south side, and kind of work our way north. Because obviously north, they're newer, south, they're older. So that was the goal, to start on the south end.
So
I'm surprised that insurance wouldn't have said that there was so much deficiencies. The ones in Edenfeld, I mean, the bottom of the slide, whenever you go there, you can see that the depression where the post that holds up the bottom is causing a loop. So if a kid goes down on it fast enough on his butt, it's gonna go like this, and you can see where it's cracking around there. After maybe another year.
Which one is that?
Edenfeld. And then if you look at Springwood, I mean, that one's, always falling apart. You
Hey,
look at
hey.
well, I mean, it's the oldest.
No, it is.
So if you look at the surface on any of these, the rubberized is gone. You'll have a brand new climbing rope that you climb up onto exposed metal. So, I mean, I'm surprised that insurance would say it's not that bad. Whenever, I've gone around and taken pictures and distributed to you guys. Yeah. There are things that need to be fixed.
So would we be looking at pricing things out? Who would do that?
We already have proposals.
Okay.
Yeah, we have proposals, but by next meeting, I'll make sure that everything's in order so you can review it.
And you already didn't you just say that we have?
We had enough for so many.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not,
it was like
we can do
200.
them all, but we can start doing some.
So
I'll
why,
send
I have.
so why don't we start?
Let's go.
Well, we were
Yeah.
putting everything on hold
We're
for the
putting everything
pool,
on hold for the pool.
to make sure that we weren't gonna be hit with a huge bill.
What he was saying is there's already funds in the reserve funds.
Right.
But whether the pool went south or not, they were already there to use.
I feel like we're just waiting to feel comfortable that we're waiting.
I think it was more the capital outlay we were gonna wait on, not making any improvements for the clubhouse with the playground until the pool.
Yeah.
I don't think it
I can't remember what I'm gonna do with John.
I do think we should walk and chew gum. I don't think it's that hard. I think there are funds available to your point. So why are we waiting? Is it just making you comfortable and sleep better at night? I mean, we have in mind there's an issue. I think we need to respond to the issue. And
That's why I.
did you see how quick John jumped up at that? He hears people talk about it. He's obviously seen it. If it's not in the shape that we expect, it should be replaced. And there's no reason why the pool should pull that up, in my opinion. So John, you know what you need?
Me, John? I'm ready. By next meeting, you'll have everything you need. I've already had 2 companies out, 2 companies provide proposals. Of course, we can change the configuration of the playground how we choose, but it'll give a good idea financially where you're gonna stand to tear it out and replace it.
Well, that's only 1 month sooner than what we're talking, maybe January, is what we initially said, so if we get it ready, if you can have it next meeting, maybe we can vote and do something.
Yeah, no, I'll have it all ready.
Maybe Christmas.
Yeah, I think we need to. I wasn't real impressed with some of the quotes that came in, the actual playground itself. It seemed there were a lot of bells and whistles and sort of, not a lot of things that you actually use, functional. They have a swing gate over here or something. Well, what do you do with that? You don't do anything. Or a mushroom or something, it's like, put it into swings and not all these other peripheral.
Well, those spring rocker things are like the best.
Yeah.
We have those.
Oh, yeah.
That's a function.
So would that be an opportunity for the companies to come show us, or is it, you can get some pictures?
We have catalogs on all that stuff.
Plus,
They
provide
design,
drawings.
they design it,
They provide.
the space you have with the poles and the specific, you can't just pick things.
Right.
because,
It's all ADA
it's gotta
compliant,
be- You have
whole
to have certain space in between certain.
The only one thing that we focused on, this has already been discussed, on the playgrounds of the field, is that it came up a lot that they're lacking children's swings, child swings.
Right.
So those have been incorporated in the new bids that we currently have. So that's just the one change, or one addition we put in the playground areas.
So for next month's agenda.
That'd be easy.
Cool.
I can have it by next weekend if you want to meet, but I'll have it by next month, no problem.
Did you want to put back the clubhouse ones that you all reviewed already as well? But we had them on hold.
Will you be ready?
I don't know if that money in that line
Well, we have-
considers this. There's a playground line, but is that also the club playground?
No, we budgeted this year already for the capital outlay.
Yeah, but I think that's.
But that's on
I think-
hold.
Yeah, I think that one's on hold. Yeah, I think that one is on hold until we get that.
Yeah.
We probably have to.
I think we'll know more come January.
Yeah.
I think we'll be
Yeah.
more comfortable with that one.
Even though we put some increases in our.
Terrible.
Motion to go home.
Yeah.
Motion to go home. I can't do it, yeah.
I'll second that. Sean, second by Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, adjourned 10:05. Thank you, everyone.